Hey, thank you so much for tuning in today and welcome to my podcast studio. Before we start on today's episode, I just wanted to take a quick moment to say I am truly grateful for you being here. It means the world to me and my guest for us to be able to share our conversation with you. If you do like what we're talking about, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. And if we do talk about something that you either agree or disagree with, please put it in the comments. We would love to hear your feedback. Also, please don't forget, I do a lot more than just podcasts. So every Tuesday, I'll put out a drum playthrough. I'll also documenting my journey on writing my solo album, which will feature a lot of guests that have been on the podcast. I'm also putting up a lot of tips and tricks of stuff that we do talk about in some of the podcasts, like insights that I get from some of the guests that share their journey in the music industry. Once again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And again, please don't forget to subscribe. Let's get into it.
Excited about starting up the studio soon?
Yeah. Oh man, it's taken just over 4 months, and now we're finally there. Like Jay had his first band, actually his second band through on the weekend, so he's actually starting to produce some recordings out of there. I still have probably 2 or 3 days left for me to sort of set everything up. At the moment, everything's just scattered all over the place. Like the first thing I did was just to set up the drums and give them a good bashing in the big live room. But other than that, yeah, like for me to actually get started, like start getting podcast people through, start like doing permanent content. We'll probably start early to late next week.
Beautiful.
So, but I'm absolutely pumped, absolutely stoked to get my fingers dirty, if you know what I mean.
I've gone through the thing you're doing a few times in my life, like buying big studios, running big studios, and it's like the most insane thing you can ever do. It's so rewarding when it's working. It's so stressful when it's not.
Yeah.
But it's like I was always part of being at big studios as well. Before my daughter was born, I had my room in the legendary Abbey Road Studio, Stockholm, the old EMI studio.
Oh wow!
Which is the biggest and oldest studio in Sweden. And actually, Abbey Road built it around the same time that they built Abbey Road. So it was called Abbey Road Stockholm because it was owned by EMI. A lot of legendary, huge albums have been done there and songs as well. So it was pretty cool to be part of that, a house with 14 studios, and all my neighbors were like the A-list people in Sweden doing all the major hits, and I was the only guitar player in the house. So I was working on my stuff, and basically every day there's a knock on the door going, we're working on this, we need a guitar or a bass on this, can you help us write? So every day you're working with people, and I kind of miss that. But at the same time, I got daycare 2 minutes away, and it's like this little room for me. I go and do my thing. So yeah, no, I'm in constant quarantine for 5 years now, so I'm safe.
Well, it might be like maybe a good place to start would maybe be at the beginning. To actually, because obviously, like you've been doing music for what, about 4 decades now.
38 years. I think this is my 38th year professionally.
Yeah. So how did you find the guitar? How did you find music to begin with?
My mother played acoustic guitar and piano at home, so there's even pictures of me when I'm like 2 years old trying to play the piano, as kids do. And my uncle also played guitar. Every time he came over, he always played songs, and he ended up working in the music business, more on the legal side, and he handled the financial side of one of the biggest labels here, and his partner is, the two of them became the biggest legal team in Sweden, handling. They still handle, I think, Max Martin and I mean every major name you could think of in Sweden. They did for years and years and years. So it was one of those things where I was 5 years old and you see somebody playing music and it just goes into your system. You go like, uh, there's nothing I've loved so far in my little life more than it is. So I borrowed my mom's huge old acoustic guitar and started playing around with it. And I guess my parents were like, well, that's charming. He'll play around for a couple of days and then put it away. I didn't stop for 2 years. So when I was 7 years old, I was still playing that huge guitar and my fingers were hurting. And so I bought my first electric guitar. I was helping around the house and moving the lawns and all of this just to make a little money. And I bought my first electric guitar. And that year I also got an amp for Christmas. And I was basically starting to play in bands with my friends when I was 8, 9 years old. I started doing live shows when I was 10, like real live shows where we were actually, they wrote about us in the local papers and stuff. And when I was 10, which was 1978, the first Toto album and the first Van Halen album came out. So having been a Kiss fan before that, which is why it all started, I saw a picture of Kiss in 1975 and I was like, whatever that is, that's what I'm going to do with my life. So when I was 10 years old, that's when I found out what studio musicians were, sort of, that you could actually play on all kinds of albums in different styles. So even though I was a rocker and I always loved playing the rock stuff, I was a huge fan of all styles. So I basically decided on my 10th birthday, I said to my parents, I'm going to be a musician, period. And they were like, yeah, cool, charming, and I said, I'm 10 years old. If I practice 5, 6, 7 hours every day for 10 years, I should be good enough so I can make an album. And then I got signed to Polygram, which is Universal Music, when I was 14. So It only took me 4 years, and I got my first record deal. And it became a pretty big thing with the band we had in Sweden. I started getting noticed in the media, and I used all of that good media, all the things they wrote about me, to start calling producers and songwriters, telling them, I don't know if you've seen about me in the paper, but I also want to be a studio musician. I know I'm young, and this was around the time when Eddie played on Beat It for Michael Jackson. And I was a huge Van Halen fan. So I was that perfect little kid who could play like Van Halen. And I started getting my first sessions going around playing with Swedish pop artists, doing the Van Halen kind of thing. That's how I got my foot in. And basically just decided that this is going to be my life, and 38 years later still hustling.
That's fantastic, man. That's a lot of sort of focus at a very, very young age, and actually being a very persistent as well. Good, because yeah, you're absolutely right. Like when you're 10 years old, like you say a lot of stuff. I mean, we're both parents as well. Like every time I talk to my 7-year-old son, like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this sport. And as soon as he's tried that for a couple of months, don't want to do that anymore. But for you to actually pick something up at such a very young age and have that focus, and even being signed at such early age as well.
And it was cool because I did play tennis. My dad was a huge athlete. He played soccer, football in Sweden. He was a fighter pilot when he was young. He was one of those guys who succeeded in a lot of things. So I loved sport, and I was really, really good tennis player. I beat people who went up becoming top 10 players in the world. So I could have stayed with tennis, which is probably what my dad wanted, not to go into the rock and roll world of crazy music. So, but I always felt like tennis has a time limit. If you're really, really lucky, you don't get injured, you can do it till maybe you're 30, whatever. Music, I can do my whole life. And again, I turned 53 last week, and I'm working more than ever. So it is true. I'm happy I chose this, but I was very mature from my young age. I had very clear goals, and I was an older soul than a 10-year-old. Even when I was 14, when we got signed, half the band were more like 18, 19-year-olds, and we were all on the same plane in mentally. But the cool thing is that we got signed based on one of the songs that I wrote, and I figured out early on that it's more than just playing. My passion for songwriting and other things was always there, and it was like the thing we've talked about, you and me, is like I never ever had a plan B. Once I decided it was this, and I even said to my parents at that time that if I don't succeed by the time I'm 50, I have myself to blame, and that's it. So getting signed at 14, having a career this long, it's been a roller coaster. It's been amazing years. There's been horrible years. There's been great money. There's been no money. And it is what it is. But it's a journey. It's a ride. And I'm more about that and than fame, success, or whatever money. The older you get, especially when you become a parent, you need to have the business side in order and take care of the time that's going to come when we're all too old to really do this. But so many people have said to me, so when are you writing a book about your life? And I said, well, I'm still living it, but it always reminds me that I actually have a life that's worth writing a cool book about. And when I think about it that way, like the memories, the adventures, the stories, and everything that I've gone through in these 40 years are worthy of a book. And what else can you ask out of life? It's been a pretty cool ride, and it's still pretty amazing. So yeah, it's a cool thing.
It's even like based on the conversations that you and I have had since we started working back in I think mid-November or something like that. Like, I don't even know where to begin. But like when it comes to everything that you've been sort of telling me along the lines, and I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg, because again, like you said, there's that many years and that many things that you have accomplished. So I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, can you maybe a good place to start is I think at one point were you 17, 18 when you first moved to LA? Because that must often have been about the time where you said, okay, if I need to scale this, if I need to take this to the next level, I think you even mentioned that in one of your YouTube videos, that you need to bring yourself where the real business is.
Absolutely, and since I was lucky enough to get into the business here in Sweden at such a young age, I did get my foot in. I started working. I was still living at home. I had very little expenses, so it was fairly easy for me to do what I wanted to do, and there was not a lot of pressure on me. But I was too young to get into the A-list level in Sweden, because those guys, the A-list people, they played on the ABBA records and all of these huge records, and I was too young for that, and which was fine for me. But I got to the point where I felt Sweden was way too small for my goals, for my visions in life. And like my grandmother taught me, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Yeah, I love that.
I always lived my life that way, and it is true, because it's like I never really look back and think about all the cool things that I've done and look at me because I did all of this. I'm like, I've had a great life and it's all cool, but it's like we're here today and what can we do tomorrow? So I'm always thinking ahead, and that's just the way I am, and that makes it exciting. So I started going to New York in '85 when I was about 16, 17 years old. And I loved New York, and I tried to live there for a while, but it wasn't the music scene that was good for me. So I was back in Sweden, and this offer just landed in 1987 when I was 19 years old to move to Los Angeles with a couple of friends and get into the business that way. And it was like one of those decisions I made over a dinner with these people in a heartbeat, like, let's do it. And it was like, well, if you want to be part of this, you need to be there in 3 weeks. I'm like, cool. So I went home to my mom and dad and said, I'm moving out. And they were like, what? Yeah, I'm moving to Hollywood. And they're like, what? and it was like, so in 3 weeks, I sold everything that I own, my little home studio, all the guitars, everything I own. 3 weeks later, I was living in Hollywood with my friends. And it was like, okay, now what? But by that time, I had already met a lot of manufacturers of guitars and amplifiers and some rock stars along the way, and they were always like, if you ever come to LA, if you ever move to LA, here's my number, you can give me a call and we'll help you out. So I got my foot in pretty quick with all of the really top A-lists, all the guys in Toto and David Foster and Quincy Jones and Michael Lando and Bill Champlin, all of these A-list top names. I met them quickly and became friends with most of them, did some work with some of them, but I also knew that I wasn't ready for that level of work that they were doing, because I didn't read music like they did. It was like, if you're going to be a studio musician, you cannot find a higher peak of the mountain than being in Hollywood in the late 80s and trying to get your foot in, because the biggest albums in the world and the greatest people were there working every day. So I always looked at it as an amazing adventure and learning experience. So these people were really cool with, you know, it was fine if I came along when they did sessions sometimes, just to see what it was like, what's required when you work in LA. And so I felt like, well, I can do some of that. I cannot do some of that. So I sort of started doing the things that I felt okay with. And again, I stayed for 5 years to 92 until the big riots came. And that's when LA went really sad and dark. The 80s were over. The music scene changed. Grunge came and everything. It was not the same town. And my mom said to me when I decided to move, like, well, worst case, you can always just come home. It's just a plane ticket and you're home. So I felt like, yeah, I want to go home. I went home. I met a girl that I was the first big love of my life, and I got an offer to buy a studio in Stockholm. So it's like, all of these things are signs that I should be back in Sweden. So since then, I've kept going back to LA for work. I had years when I went 4, 5, 6, 7 times a year just to work all the time. But again, it's not because of the pandemic only, but even before that, the music scene has changed. A lot of what was cool in LA has moved to Nashville, and New York has come back in a different way. America is a strange country anyway these days. It's not what it used to be back then. I mean, to live in LA in the 80s, my next door neighbor for 5 years was Vince Neil from Motley Crue. So when I opened our apartment door, that door in front of me was him and his wife, the Playboy girl he was married to at the time. So I was used to hanging with all of these rockers all the time, and it was, again, a pretty cool chapter for the book, you know. But it's like, you know, it was amazing to have been part of the 80s everywhere. I mean, as a signed artist, as a musician and everything. But it's, you know, it's a long journey and everything, but I will forever cherish and treasure the years in LA and everything that I've learned in America in the last 30 plus years, because it's been incredible, and it still is with all the people I'm lucky to get to work with. So
absolutely. And again, probably for people, if people listening or watching, think about it for a second here. This is before YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and everything. So it's actually, it makes me think about, like, how would you actually network back then? Because you wouldn't have the same sort of connectivity as you have these days. Like, for instance, like I think I saw an ad that you put up during the pandemic on my Facebook feed, and that's how I came across you. Otherwise, I probably would never have found you. But back in the day, how did you network? How did you get an offer for someone to say, "Hey, dude, come to LA, come over and hang out in our studios, and, you know, hang out with Quincy Jones and Toto and the Porcaro brothers"? Yeah. Like, how did that happen?
It's very much you had to be out and meeting people at wherever they played. And I've always been the kind of guy, if I see somebody that I want to work with or actually want to meet, I just go up and start talking. And if you do that in the right way, like if you're cool about it and you're not like starstruck or anything, or annoying or anything, respectful, and just treat them like normal people. Yeah. And hopefully maybe even have something to offer in terms of what you're good at. The doors open, especially back then, again, before cell phones, before internet, before all of this. LA always had a very cool thing that I loved, and it was really strange to learn it, but I understood quickly what it was about. Um, that whenever you met somebody, you actually walked up and told them, hey, my name is this is what I've done, this is my whole thing, here's everything about me. And they went, oh cool, well I'm this and that, and here's everything about me. And it's like, okay, cool, we're pre-approved, let's start working. It's like you didn't spend all this time to like sort of, well, I kind of did this, no, you had to walk up and say, I've done this many albums, I got this many gold records, I'm working on this. Okay, that means that you're probably pretty good at what you do, and so let's try to do something. And if you did click, you instantly started working on something. So you removed that whole the dating time. You just went straight in, start working, and so you were quickly inside the door all the time, but you had to deliver once you were inside. That was the trick. So it was a different thing, but it also it fit me, even though it was a strange way of doing things.
And then again, how, like, is there a defining moment where you can say, look, working with this guy or being in this particular spot at this time, that's sort of where everything shifted a bit? Like, is there a specific moment that you can think of that would have been like a really defining moment in your career, early days?
I think it's like a ladder. It was deciding to become a musician, getting signed at 14, and then a long step for 5 years until I moved to LA. Every time I went to that new step, because I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I've always been extremely focused and taking care of the journey of my life. So I'm like very aware. I'm here in the moment all the time. So it's usually like 5 year steps all the time. And whenever you reach a new step, you go like, okay, cool, I'm up one step. Okay, so what's this step about? Why am I here? What I'm supposed to do, and how long can I stay here until it's time for the next one? And I've sort of just kept climbing that way. And the thing that I'm maybe most proud of is that I created the life that I have myself. Nobody gave it to me. I didn't win the lottery. It's always been a hard, tough struggle against everything, against parents saying, well, this is fine, but you should get a real job, or against society saying, when are you going to cut your hair and actually get a real job, or friends saying, you'll never make it, this is not for you, this is too hard, nobody's going to, blah blah. It's always people telling you can't do this. So when you hear yourself constantly saying F you, this is my life, this is so the one thing that I'm most proud of in my whole life is the fact that I created the life that I have. And again, it's like, if I could go back in time, and if I had a choice of living a regular life with getting a more proper education and a really good job, and you marry somebody and you buy a nice house and all that, or having this life, there's a strong side of me that might have chosen that path, because it would have been maybe easier, but maybe also super boring and maybe not good at all. I don't know. It is what it is, and it's still a long way to go, hopefully. And it's like, again, if I have chosen that life, it wouldn't be much of a book to write about.
Exactly. And I think the beautiful thing about entrepreneurs, or people that actually create their own path, if you like, but really, like, you created your own business. Like, you are Tommy.
Yes.
And everything that you've accomplished, is really, you have just built your business. And the funny thing, because I know exactly what you mean when you have like parents and friends and families, we just want the best for you. Like, go out and get a real job, and don't be a dreamer. And the thing is the fact is, like, to a lot of people, it actually scares them enough that they forget about it and they go out and get a normal job and do that. But for the ones that it doesn't, and as you know, I'm kind of in that other boat at the moment too. It's like that actually fuels me. You know, that wants me to work even harder to prove them wrong, to find out that
absolutely,
of course I can do this. I believe in me. I don't care if you don't. I believe in me, and I'm gonna do it. And the fact that you've done that and at such young age is so inspiring, man. I love that.
Well, yeah, and exactly, and you're doing the same thing, and I have the same respect for that, which is the beautiful side of it. And again, I really, really never had a plan B, because in my soul, it was like plan B is to jump off a cliff. Like it's either this or it's nothing. It's like there's nothing I can do or want to do or anything. So it was always this.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And when I the older I got, and when you have a kid, because I had Holly at a later age in life, even though my girlfriend has 2 kids and I've been with them for 18 years, but we had them every other week, and I adore them, but it's still not my kid. It's a different thing when you get your own kid. As soon as Holly came 5 years ago, it was like in a heartbeat, I went from I was born to be a musician, this is how I define myself in this world, to screw that, I have a great hobby, I'm a dad. That's what life's about. Nothing else matters. It's like you're a parent, period. And it's the greatest, coolest, best feeling in the world. But it also fuels my creative side and makes me rethink where I want to go from now on. I'm 53. Hopefully I can do this for many, many years. In my life, it's more than just playing a guitar. I write songs, I mix, I produce. I love the video aspects of stuff, and then pictures, photos, whatever. So there's a lot of creative sides that I like working on. So who knows if I'm gonna stay playing guitar forever and ever? It's something I love doing, and it will hopefully always be there. But I have even a greater passion for writing music, and I might be involved in a rock musical starting this summer, which is going to take a few years, and it's a multi-million-dollar project with Oscar winners and Grammy winners and Emmy winners and like
wow.
Big legends. So if that takes off and it's really happening, it's something I always wanted to do, and it might mean that I'm going to take a break from how I usually work and just do a few things that I like doing. And it's about tomorrow. It's about where the journey can take me, and I need to fall asleep with a smile and wake up with a smile, feeling that life is fun and creative, not ignoring the fact that we're adults and we need to live like adults and all of that. But it's a journey. It's an adventure, and this adventure, the size of it, is based on my brain, how creative it can be, and how brave I am in chasing these dreams. And this is how I live my life, and it's amazing. And I created it, and nobody can take it away from me. That's the beautiful part about it.
But speaking about being creative, it would be I'd love to sort of get your story on some of the earlier projects you did, because they're obviously like you've released some solo stuff under your Radioactive banner, where you have had some pretty I think they're pretty all right. The musicians you had on that album.
There's some decent guys that I had to bring along to help their careers. Right. Yeah. No, it's actually, Radioactive is my baby musically. It's turning 30 years this year, which is insane.
Yeah.
And it came from me moving to Los Angeles and being a huge Toto fan. Toto was the first band that I met and became really good friends with, especially Jeff and Mike Porcaro became like brothers to me the last 5 years of Jeff's life. And through Mike's life, I mean, it's still insane that both of them are gone. Something I will never get over. We were extremely good friends. I traveled with them in Europe when they were on tour. Every time I was in LA, we were having dinners together. I was in their kitchens cooking food with them. We were like brothers, really good friends. So Radioactive actually started when Toto played in the north of Stockholm in the summer of '91, which was the last tour that Jeff Porcaro did. They did a short tour of some festivals in Europe. And I traveled up and I saw them. And the day after the show, we had a great evening and everything. The day after the show, everyone's sort of tired. We're sitting in the lobby of the hotel. And it's me and my girlfriend at the time and a couple of friends. And it's the whole band Toto's just sitting right across me. And it's completely silent. There's nobody else there. Everyone's just reading a paper and not talking. And it's one of those moments where you get an idea and you say it the same instant, and you don't have a filter to stop yourself. Because if I had that filter, I would probably not have said it. So I hear myself saying in a complete silence, I say, hey guys, if I get a record deal, would you play on my album? And there's like 3 or 4 seconds of silence where I'm thinking, did I say it out loud or did I say it in my head? And they're all sort of looking up. And they're like looking at each other going like, of course.
Sure.
Cool. Okay, cool. And it goes back in silence. And I'm still going, this didn't really happen. I did not ask them to play on my album. And then Jeff stands up and he comes over to me and he says, come here. And we go to the reception. He grabs a paper and pen. And again, before internet, before cell phones and all of this, so it was a different way of communicating with people, even though I had most of the guys' phone numbers. But he went around the whole band and just asked everyone, said, write down the best number for Tommy to reach you, and let's make this happen. He gave me the paper and he said, get a deal, man. We'll play on your album. And I'm like, you serious? He goes, of course, no problem. And I'm like, okay. And 10 minutes later, in the reception walks a guy from Sony Records in Stockholm, and I know this guy well. It's a really sweet guy. So I walk up to him with this piece of paper, and I tell him, you know what? If you sign me, Toto will play on my band. I'm not kidding. And he went, what? Really? What? And I said, yeah, I spoke to them. And he goes, okay. And this was like a Friday or something. He goes, come up to me on Monday. He says, let's talk on Monday. I said, cool. And on the flight back from north of Sweden to Stockholm with Toto, he asked the band, he said, is this for real? And Jeff and Lukather said to him, sign him and we'll play on the album. Do this, it's no joke. So I walk into Sony on Monday, and I have a couple of cassettes with me. Like, I need to convince these people that we're going to make this happen, because I cannot have this and have it go away. So I walk in, and there's a contract on the table. And I'm like, what? And they go, well, we spoke to them. They, if we sign you, they'll play on it. So let's do this. Okay. So I took the contract home. We looked it over, and it was fine. I went back and we signed it and everything. Great. And then the boss says, so what kind of album do you want to do? And I'm like, yeah, it's that thing of maybe you should hear some of the music. It's like the funniest situation, because I had a cassette or two with me of some songs that I worked on around the time. So I played in some songs. And again, the boss says, wow, cool. It's even going to be a good album.
That's a bonus.
It was like a red flag for me, going like, yeah. And I was like, never mind. I got a deal. I got the money. I called Jeff and Mike, and the guy said, I got a deal. And they're like, cool, let's put this together. So Jeff and Mike helped me put everything together, because it was hard to put everything together from Sweden without internet, without emails. I had a fax machine and a very expensive regular phone line. So Jeff ended up helping me book a studio, get all the people together, make it happen. So that's when I went over and recorded the whole thing in October of '91. I got back to Sweden, ended up being screwed pretty bad by the people at Sony. There was one guy in particular who actually got fired because he was a mess, and he screwed things up so bad that I ended up, with my parents' help, taking a bank loan and buying myself out of the deal with Sony. I paid him back.
Really?
And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna. Here I am, 23 years old. I just produced my own album with Toto as my backing band. It's like there's no way I'm gonna make idiots at a record label ruin this chance. So I paid them back. I got the tapes, and this is why it took me 10 years to get the album out in 2001, because I had no deal, and I started like, okay, I don't even know who's gonna sing this, and I didn't have a recording studio for big analog tapes or anything. So it took a long time to figure things out. But in the 10 years is when I met Bobby Kimball, Joseph Williams, and Fergie Fredrickson, the original singers of Toto.
Yeah, yeah.
And the original bass player, David Hungate, ended up playing on it. And then I managed to get the super legend, David Foster, to play piano on the song. And he never did sessions. Even Richard Marx told me years later, how the F did you get Foster to play on your, he won't even play for me. But somehow I managed to get like 35 huge legends. Every time I worked on an album, I did Fee Waybill from the Tubes. I worked on his album with Bruce Geitch and Richard Marx and some other people. And I said to Fee, I'll play for free on your album if you want to sing a song on the one that I have. And the thing is, in '92, Jeff Porcaro passed away. And he was the favorite drummer and favorite friend for all of these people. So I had an unreleased album, one of the last albums Jeff ever did with Jeff. And of course, all of these people were like, I want to do one last album with Jeff. So good for me. It wasn't always a favor for me, but I got them because I had Jeff playing drums and I had Toto as my backing band. So I ended up getting 35 huge legends to appear on this album. And it became a thing before other people started doing these all-star albums that you see more often now. When I did it, nobody had really done it this way, where you have one singer per song and all of these big names in this way. And again, before internet and everything, these days you can sort of email anyone on a Facebook page and they'll go, oh, cool, I got my little setup. I can do a solo, I can sing. It's easier today. It was tough back then because, first of all, if I get Bobby Kimball to sing on it, he needs to book a studio in LA with an engineer, and I need somehow to get the music to him and for him to get into a studio and do all of this and record and send it back. And it was a lot trickier and more expensive than it is today. But
yeah,
I ended up working 10 years on it, sometimes off and on. And finally, I got a new deal for it, and I released the first album. And it sold really, really well, especially in Japan. It went up on the charts everywhere. And for me, it was always one of those once in a lifetime projects. I always said in the interviews, this is a once in a lifetime thing, because 10 years doing one album under these circumstances, it was crazy. But during that process, actually, internet came, it became easier to do things, and it became such a great album that the record label said to me, why don't you do another one? And I was like, my instinct was like, no, that was a one-time thing. And they were like, well, now you got the ball rolling. It would be stupid for you to not keep this thing going. And I'm like, I didn't think about it. So I did another one with less names, but still some cool people, and it ended up great. And I did a third one, again, with a lot of cool names, because it was easier by then. I had a bigger foot in the business. I kept working with a lot of cool people, and every time I worked with somebody that I really liked, I said to them, I'll play for free for you if you sing for me. And it was actually Fergie Fredrickson, amazing friend who sadly passed away. He's the one who named it a bro deal. We're all bros, so you play for me, I play for you, I sing for you, you sing for you. It's like one of those. So I still do this to this day. Whenever I'm working on something for myself, if I'm working with somebody that I really like, I usually ask them. Like I wrote 2 songs for Robin McAuley's new album, the singer from Michael Schenker, and a lot of amazing singer for his new album. And I said, I'll do a couple of songs for you if you sing on my next album. Cool, super.
Done.
So it doesn't cost me anything to work for him. It doesn't cost him anything to work for me, and we don't pay each other, but we're all happy. And we're staying alive working. So it's a cool thing, but it's like Radioactive is turning 30 this year. I was 23 when I was there in the studio telling Jeff Porcaro, no, that's not how the song goes. No, we need to change the tempo. Sitting next to Mike Porcaro, and he goes, I can't play that riff. He hands me the bass, and we punch in one of the faster licks. He goes, I can play that. You'd play that. It's like, that's 30 years ago, and it's surreal when I think back on it. And again, chapters of the book that I like. When I think back to being a kid, Kiss is why I started. I played on Paul Stanley's second solo album. Deep Purple were massive idols for me when I was a kid, like for most people in rock. I have 5 gold records on my wall from working on their, not the latest, but the album before that, recording them here in Stockholm in that big studio. And Alice Cooper is like, together with Kiss from 75, like was an icon for me. And last week I was #1 on Billboard with his latest album that I once again co-wrote, play on, and co-produced a couple of songs. And it was my 6th album with Alice in the last 12 years. So when I look at like Toto, like all the major bands and artists that I adored as a kid are people that I actually got to work with. That's when I look back at my grandmothers, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. It's like, I actually created this. I dared to go after all of this. Of course you need talent. You need to deliver. You need, when you're in the studio, you need to do your thing, of course, otherwise it's not going to work. But it's quite amazing, the journey, and a lot of shit can happen in your life, but there's like this part nobody can ever take away.
What about back in the day? So when you were doing that album with Toto, was there any at any given time where you sort of was stopping up and thinking like, wow, is this actually happening? Because obviously, like you're so young, you're there with you're there with like probably one of the best probably some of the best musicians in the world. Like they were adored by everyone, and still is to date, even though they're not here anymore. And you're there, a little kid from Sweden that got traveled, got signed, and bang, and you're there.
It's not a joke. I'll put my hand on my dad's grave. This is the truth. It's the one time in my whole life where we're right in between 2 songs. Jeff is just putting the paper together. Mike is putting his paper together, and I'm like leaning back and I'm looking at Jeff and Mike, because we cut it, the 3 of us, with no click tracks. We cut the basics as a drum, bass, guitar thing, and then we did overdubs with Steve Porcaro and David Page afterward. And I'm looking at them, and I am 23 years old, and I'm diehard Toto fan, even though they're my friend. And I actually pinched my arm hard. So I got a little bruise, like the classic thing. I pinched it and said to myself, this is that one moment in life where this cliche is true, where you pinch your arm so you never ever forget this moment. So I felt so much, and I was exactly in that moment. I was so present. I was so prepared. I enjoyed every second. To this day, 30 years later, I still remember, like almost hour by hour, everything from those. I was in LA for 3 weeks doing these recordings, and it's just one of those unreal chapters in the memory bank forever. In my opinion, the greatest drummer who ever walked the planet was Jeff Porcaro, and not only a drummer, but the greatest human you could ever meet. There are books being written about him all the time, and the stories never end about what an amazing human being he was. And he became a mentor. He called me in Sweden a lot of times, out of the blue, just called me and went, hey buddy, what's up? And we spent an hour or 2 on the phone, And again, this was when it was not cheap to call from LA to Stockholm on a regular phone line. That was a few $100 every time he called, but he didn't care. It's like he took me under his wings, and Mike did the same thing, and we became really, really close friends. I was at Mike Boccaro's house 5 days before Jeff died, and we were having dinner. The phone rings, and it's Jeff, and he says, "Hey, buddy," it's his brother Mike. "I just got back from Florida. He was on vacation, and Mike goes, "Tom is here." And he was like, "Man, I'm really tired, but, I want to come over and say hi." So he came over and said hi, a quick hi. And he was like, "Man, I'm gonna see you in Sweden in a couple of months, And I flew back to Sweden 1 or 2 days later, and a couple of days later, he passed away. So it's like we were almost like family in that sense, and I don't think there are any other people I ever worked with that I hold closer to my heart than those Toto guys, and actually Bobby Kimball and Fergie Fredriksson as well, because Bobby I started working with. Not a lot of people know that Toto starting to go down a lot in their popularity around the time they made the Tamboo album. They went from selling out bigger arenas to selling out 1,500, 2,000 seaters, and it wasn't the same band anymore. I had become friends with Bobby Kimball, like very, very good friends. And he was in a really bad state in his life. He was very, very sad. Nobody wanted to work with him because, he had a bad reputation from being fired from Toto and a lot of the stories. But he was still singing better than anyone on the planet, and he was such a sweet soul. And I forced Steve Lukather to have a meeting with Bobby, because Lukather kept saying a lot of really nasty stuff about Bobby. And I actually got really upset with him, and I told him to fuck up, you piece of horrible human being. You don't have the right to say these because you happen to play in a band, and you're no better with all your fucking drugs and you're cheating on wife, and like he was a mess as well. I said, you're not the one to be acting like this. He got really angry with me, but he called me back a couple of days later. He said, "I'm sorry I got so angry. I think you were a bit hard on me, but I also see that I think there's a point to what you're saying." So Bobby was living in Louisiana, Lukather in LA. I made them meet for a 3-4 hour lunch. That lunch is when they hugged and became friends again. That's why Bobby came back to Toto. That's when he became the singer again. They made a new album. They started touring the world. They got up on top again because the original sound came back. So I did the same for Fergie later as well. I got him back in good shape. He did a show with Toto in his hometown. It was around Chicago. And both Lukather and Bobby and these people have talked about this in interviews, but it's like there's a lot of these stories in my journey where I've been part of a lot of these people's lives in pretty big ways, but I'm okay with being like a studio musician. We do all the work in a small room at home, and Alice Cooper gets to be the superstar around the world because he is a superstar. If that's what I wanted to be, I wouldn't be in this little room. I would run around trying to be a superstar. It's not how I wanted to live my life, but it's funny sometimes when I look back at all the things that I've done behind the scenes for a lot of people and how big it's changed their life, and most people will never know. So it's part of the story, definitely.
Well, the funny thing is, like, you've obviously I had a look at your YouTube channel. You've actually toured a bit with that Legends of Rock project. I saw there was some footage from you going to Japan with Bobby, and I think Fergie was there as well. So how did that come about? Was that as a part of the Radioactive collaborations?
Well, it came out of that sort of, because over the years I invited so many of these big names to sing on my albums, and I was invited to work on their albums, and sometimes it started with me playing on their album and I brought them into mine. But I became friends with most of the legendary rock singers from the 80s, the classic singers of all the original bands. And because Bobby Kimball and I were like truly like brothers. We were, to this day, we was like so close friends. We always talked about it. We need to play live together. We need to somehow find a way to play live together. And some 8-9 years ago, whatever, when we started this, I got an offer from the biggest Christmas gala in Sweden that they have every year at the biggest arena in Stockholm. They always have like 10 of the biggest stars in Sweden and a couple of big international stars, and it's sold out. Huge thing. And the guy running it contacted me and said, who do you have? Who could you bring over that you could play with for like 5 days as a special guest? And I was like, how about Bobby Kimball from Toto? And they were like, wow, this is great. So it ended up great. Bobby came over. Finally, we got to play together, and we got to do like the 3-4 biggest hits with a big band on the big stage, and we had so much fun. But I also said to him, you're in Sweden. We need to do a tour. I'll put together a band, and we need to do another week, 10 days after these shows, playing all all the Toto stuff. And, I think we even included one of the Radioactive songs. And he was like, man, finally, absolutely. So I put together a band, and it sounded incredible, and it was so good. So from that, the idea of we should do more of this. And it became, again, one of those where your brain is spinning and you're going like, well, I'm also really good friends with Fergie. So what if we had 2 Toto singers doing like half of the show each? Well, what if we bring in Bill Champlin and we have 3 singers? And we ended up with an idea of what if you have 4 legendary singers who do 4 of their biggest hits each, and then an encore of 1 more song. It's like a full 2-hour show where every song is the biggest hit they ever sang. So that's how it started. And the first tour we ever did was in Japan, like sold out arenas in Japan, and which was amazing. And we ended up working with that for a few years in South America and all over Europe, and we did military bases in Kyrgyzstan, and we were everywhere with that. So that was an incredible journey, because I never really toured when I was a kid because I wanted to be a studio musician. So I missed that chance when in the 80s when all my friends were touring Japan with their hard rock bands and all of that. I missed all of that. So I got to do it later with these incredible singers, which was like, again, like the bucket list thing.
I could imagine, yeah.
amazing adventures.
So how does playing live, especially with sort of this caliber of musicians, how does that compare to doing studio work with sort of like same caliber? Like again, obviously you mentioned before Paul Stanley, Alice Cooper. You work with Hollywood Undead as well. So playing live versus being in the studio with these guys, have you got a preference?
I love both of them as much, but for the obvious different reasons. Because I've worked the last 10 years with Mutt Lange on a lot of projects, and when you're working with Mutt Lange and Desmond Child and Bob Ezrin and these A-list absolutely greatest producers in the world, you have to be on the absolutely highest part of Mount Everest every second on everything you do. And that's a challenge that I love. Like, how great can we make everything we do every time? And so that combined with the fact that I've always, I worked in some way or another. I worked on more than 3,000 albums in my life, plus hundreds and hundreds of singles, movies, and this and that. When I'm not on this planet anymore, all of this will still be here. You can still go on Spotify Deluxe in the future version, and you will find most of the work I ever did forever and ever and ever. Hopefully my daughter, until she's hopefully very old, can go like, this is what Dad did, and during his life. So all of this is a legacy that's going to be here, which is something I always loved in that creative part. The other side of it is that I love playing live because the kind of adrenaline kick that you get from a good show where the sound is great and the audience is amazing, especially with legends, because when you start playing Africa or Hold the Line or a Journey song or a Rainbow song or whatever it is, and you look over your shoulder or in your monitors and you hear the original voice singing I Surrender or Hold the Line or the Chicago hits or whatever it is, and you look over and it is the original guy and you're like, holy shit, this is cool. I mean, there's in the moment, and it is what it is, and once the show is over, if it was a great show, everyone is just high on adrenaline, and it was so cool. But with time, it becomes a memory. It becomes just something that we look back on. So it is in the moment energy, and then it's the whole trick of being a studio musician, because when I'm in this room almost every day working, I'm alone in a small room and I have a file coming and I need to create something that makes it feel like the same adrenaline level of being on a stage where everything explodes. So how do you do that when you're alone in a small room? That is the trick. And I've spoken to professional athletes, some of the greatest ones in Sweden, and I've asked a few of them, like one of the guys who was running the 100 meters in the Olympics and stuff. I said, how do you wake up every day that you're going to compete and you run 100 meters within milliseconds? Like, how do you create, because we all wake up feeling different, it's like it's hurting here, or I have a headache, or I'm tired, didn't sleep well. How do you still explode for 9 point whatever seconds on that 100 meters within milliseconds? And it's the same thing when you're a studio musician. Like you save your energy until you know what you're going to do, and you hit the red light and you explode, and it happens within 1, 2, 3 takes, or it's going to take you 40, 50, 60, 70 takes, because if you can't capture it when it explodes, your brain takes over. You start thinking. The first 1, 2, 3, 4 times, it's just an emotion and a feeling, an explosion that happens, and that's what I like to create. And if I miss it, I start thinking, and then I have to play it usually a lot of times, combined with the routine you have. I've gotten better at it, so I'm probably, if I miss the first couple of ones, it's usually within the first 10 takes, because you get professional in the way you think. So it's a different kind of mind doing this, because when you're on a stage, when Bobby Kimball and me did the Viña del Mar Festival in Chile, and there's 35,000 people in the audience and 160 million people watching. It's the second biggest TV show after the Eurovision. And you're up there and you have a huge band, and it's the biggest stage you've ever seen. And if I fuck up this solo right now, it's gonna be forever there. So you need to love that moment. You need to go like, this is gonna be so cool. Because if you're scared in that moment and you mess up, So I love them both, but for very different reasons. So, but I am a studio rat, which is why I decided early on that I love spending 11 months working on an Alice Cooper album, being super proud when it's done, and don't have to do 1,500 interviews afterwards, because Alice is a natural superstar. He's a legend. That's his life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's not. I'm already on my next album. I'm already working on whatever comes next. That's who I am.
Yeah, I tried prepping a couple of the people that I know are big fans of the show. I tried to sort of prep them for this interview, and pretty much everybody wanted to ask about how it was to work with Alice Cooper, especially as you mentioned, like the whole Paranoid experience. Where you were there, you were working with him for 11 months. How does that work in this day and age? Like, how are you writing the album? If you wouldn't mind, explain a little bit about that specific album.
Yeah, no, Alice is special in my life for many reasons, because all the way back in the 80s, when I really got into songwriting, understanding that I loved writing songs, not just playing guitar, the one artist on the whole planet that I, for some reason, felt that I could really write something great for was Alice Cooper. I have cassettes from 87, 88, 89, where it says Alice 1, Alice 4. I have songs that I wrote that would have been so good for Alice. And I had no way of contacting him back then. I was in a band in 89, 90 that almost got signed to a Swedish band. We almost got signed in America. And our manager, a Swedish legendary journalist, is good friends with Alice. So he said, I spoke to Alice about the song you have. And Alice wouldn't mind, doing it on the album with you guys. So but we didn't get the deal and the thing fell apart. That was the closest I ever got to it. Years later, I became really good friends with Eric Singer from Kiss, the drummer, who also played with Alice for many years. So between Kiss tours, Eric still toured with Alice, and they were, I don't know what it was, it must have been 12, 13, 14 years, something, a long time ago. They were playing a festival in Sweden. I went there with Eric, and I told him my whole thing about Alice, and he said, I'll make sure that you get to meet Alice. I'll tell Alice about you. So he set up a meeting. I got to meet Alice, who was like the nicest person on the planet, which she is. And Eric had already told him who I was and that I was really good working with a bunch of people. And so Alice goes, we should write something. And I'm like, yeah, man, this finally I can have this conversation with Alice. We're going to write something. So Alice goes, I'll give you my email. And he's just about to give me his email. It's just us in a room with his manager, tour manager, whatever. For some reason, this idiot tour manager goes, oh, no, don't start giving out your email to people. And Alice is like, because he's a nice guy. He goes, well, you can reach me through Eric, whatever, So, yeah, nothing really happened. We almost started writing. Even a couple of guys in the band got in touch with me, like, we should write something together. I'll give it to Alice. And we were so close to making it happen. And around then, at the same time, a couple of years later, I became very good friends with one of the most brilliant people I know on this planet, an arranger called Jeremy Rubolino, who is Bob Ezrin's cousin. And Jeremy is a Grammy Award-winning top producer, top arranger, produced Bruce Kulick's albums, the BK3 album with Gene Simmons and all of these people. And we became really good friends. And so he told me, lad, well, Bob is doing a new Alice Cooper album. They're doing Welcome to My Nightmare, like a follow-up to The Nightmare. And they're still looking for some songs. So, we should try to write something. And I'm like, if we don't make it happen now, it's never going to happen. So we ended up writing a killer song. He gave it to Bob. Bob really liked the song, and it was in the discussion, but it fell outside in the last minute. And I'm like, this is killing me. So I'm in Nashville working with a lot of people, and I had already been working with Desmond Child for a few years. Desmond lives in Nashville. He had just sold his house. They were moving to another one. So Desmond calls me up and said, we're having sort of farewell party to the house. If you want to come over for a barbecue, I got some friends over. I was like, yeah, man. So I get over there. I bring the people I was working with me. We're sitting in the kitchen. Desmond is fixing some stuff. He comes and he sits with us, and we're talking about this and that. And in walks Bob Ezrin to his kitchen. And I'm like, well, this is kind of freaky. And it's just a month or two before that we sent this song.
Right.
So it turns out Bob lives next door to Desmond. And I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool. I'm at Desmond Child's house, and Bob Ezrin walks in. I'm like, pretty surreal, pretty cool moment.
Convenient.
So it's like, and I say to Bob, and Desmond goes, hey, these are my friends from Sweden. This is Tommy. And I go like, I'm the guy who wrote the song with Jeremy. He goes, oh, that's a really good song. Did you play on it? And I go, yeah. Oh, good. It was a cool song. It didn't fit the album, but it was a good song. I liked it. Cool. And then Desmond says, the song we're doing right now for Alice that we have so much trouble with the guitars on? They had tried to record it 2 or 3 times with players. Just didn't work out. And they loved the song, but the guitars never made the song good enough. So they were talking about putting it as the last song on the album. And again, one of those moments in life where you want to pinch yourself. Desmond, who I adore, says, well, Tommy here has saved my ass so many times on so many big albums that we've done. A lot of the biggest gold albums and platinum albums I have are with Desmond. So I know he will make this song perfect. And so nice. Bob goes, cool. So when can you do it? And I'm like, well, I fly back to Sweden in 1 or 2 days. And he goes, cool. Can you meet me on Skype on Saturday? And he goes, you have your studio? I got a studio. So a couple of days later, I'm in my studio. I'm on Skype with Bob, like you and I are talking right now. And he sends me all the files, the whole session of a song. And he says, see what you can do and call me back, when you got something. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty surreal. And I love the song. It's so beautiful. Around that time, which is 11 years ago, 12 years ago, I was doing a lot of work for Desmond and Andreas Karlsson, these people. It was around the time when that typical Katy Perry kind of pop, a lot of those kind of pop, clean, semi-clean guitars were going on. And the sound and the feel of that fits so perfectly into this beautiful half ballad that they were doing with Alice. So I came from a different angle into this song because of my studio work, and I came up with all of these guitars that I felt so good. So I made just a rough take of my ideas and a mix, and I sent it to Bob, and he calls me up and he goes, this is insane. I mean, the song is this is perfect. This is exactly what we needed. I'm like, okay, cool. This is pretty material. And he goes, okay, so can you do all of the guitars for real and just send me the files? I'm like, you got it. So I spent like 3 hours, because I wanted them to be better than anything I've done before. I really got into making them as good as I could. Sent him all the files, everything back. And while I was doing that, I got the feeling that there's a solo section in there, and it's probably going to have a guitar solo. So I sent him all the stuff, and he goes, I'll call you back in an hour. I'm just going to put all the files in and see how they feel. Okay, cool. So he calls me back, and he goes, I'm not kidding. You saved the song for real. Thank you, Desmond. But yeah, you did. The song is now perfect. Finally, it is what it should be. And I'm like, wow, I think I'm finally on an Alice Cooper album. So I feel pretty good. So I say to Bob, there's this section there. It feels like there's going to be a guitar solo. He goes, yeah. I'm like, can I take a shot at it? Like, can I try a solo there? He goes, well, I was planning to give that part to Steve Hunter, but I mean, yeah, of course you can take a shot at it, because I did all of these nice cleaning guitars. Of course you want to play a solo. It's an Alice Cooper album. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I spend like 2 or 3 hours, like I'm going crazy trying to do the best solo of my life. I go in, I dissect, I redo, I replay, I go back. Now I do the. I come up with what I think is one of the best solos of my life. I make a really good mix of the whole song, put all the guitars together, and I even put a little mastering on it, and I send it to him. And he calls me back, and he goes, hey, I just got the song. And if you know anything about Bob Ezrin, if you look at Kiss Destroyer and the way he worked with people over the years, he had a whistle. It was boot camp. It was Bob's way or fuck off, period. Nothing else mattered. Bob tells you the way it is. So he turns the volume up, and it's pretty good sound on Skype when you're talking to people. So he's listening to the whole song, and the solo comes, and he leans in, and he turns the volume up more, and I see him go like, yeah, like I'm getting the feeling like, yeah, man, fuck you, you're gonna you're digging this, you know. And he listens through the whole song until the very, very last note. And he looks at me and he goes, I fucking love all the rhythm guitars. I hate the solo, but I love the rhythm guitars. I fall off my chair because that's like, you know, if you know the comedian
like
Don Rickles, it was an honor to be insulted by Don Rickles. It's like, I just got the Esrin Zap thing, you know. And I start laughing and he goes, what? What's so funny? And I'm like, I've never spent more time on a solo. How can you say that you hate the solo? And I'm laughing. And he goes, no. And he said one thing that's one of the best things I've heard in my life. He goes, no, the solo is brilliant, but it's not what I'm looking for. Right. And that was one of those, wow, okay, that I can buy. It's like you can't say it was a bad solo because it's a really good solo. He goes, the solo is brilliant, but it's not what I'm looking for. The album comes out and I hear Steve Hunter's solo on it, and I go, oh, well, of course. Right. That's what the song needed. He was absolutely right. That's the solo. And I told Steve Hunter this story, you know, a couple of years after that because he was still touring with Alice. So that's, at least the song went from being the last one on the album, almost not making it, to the opening track and the song that most people loved on it. So, you know, It was a good start to all of this. This is why years later I got the email from Bob saying, we're starting a new Alice Cooper album. Do you have some ideas? You know, do you want to be involved? The door was open for an invitation. And that's, after all of these years, that's when I just wrote him back, you know, like, hold my beer, motherfucker. Yeah. You know? So I went to the studio. I wrote 2 songs the first day.
And this is for paranormal?
Yeah, for paranormal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
So I went into the studio, and I was still working at the big EMI studio. So I had my room and loudspeakers and everything. I wrote 2 killer songs. Sounded really good. My studio was much better at the time than when we started working together. So I sent Bob both of these songs, and he was like, can I call you? And he called me back and he said, like, when did you do this? I said, today. He goes, okay, this is pretty fucking good. And I'm like, I'll get you more. So I ended up doing 2 songs a day for the first 5 days, Monday to Friday. I gave them 10 songs in 5 days. Wow. Bob sends them to Alice. Alice calls Bob up and goes, so I guess the album is done then. I guess we have the song we need. And Bob's going, I don't know how this happened, but this is something we need to pursue for real. So they call me up and they go, do you want to come over to Nashville? Do you want to work with us on this? And I'm like, are you kidding? I waited since the 80s to get into this situation. So a couple of weeks later, me, Bob Escher, and Alice Cooper are spending a week, 10 days in Bob's studio in Nashville. Just the 3 of us with the songs that I wrote. Open one song. Okay, so what can we do with this? We start coming up with melodies, lyrics, and this and that, making demos so we can start putting them together. We got through 3 or 4 songs in the first week, and we still had the other batch. But it was an amazing start. I flew back home. I kept writing. I kept sending. Bob said, can you come up with something in the style of this or something like that? No problem. I kept writing, sending songs. I ended up writing 38 songs for the project. Wow. And kept going back. So we kept working because Alice was still on tour at this time. So whenever he had a little break on the tour, he would fly over to Nashville, they would fly me over, and we would work in the studio putting songs together. So it just started becoming a really cool album, strong album, and this fantastic feeling because both of these, if you ever saw the Muppet Show, the 2 old guys in the balcony, yeah. That's Alice and Bob. They have that dry humor, and they're like, they've known each other for 50 plus years. And the greatest part was not being in the studio, having all of the fun creating the music. That was work, and it was fine. But it was staying at the same hotel as Alice, having breakfast or lunch or dinner together. A lot of times he would go and play golf in the morning, pick me up, and we'd go to the studio, and then the three of us would go to lunch. And I'm at lunch, and I'm like, tell me about the early years. Tell me how it was when you guys started working. And they start telling me all of these stories, and I'm just sitting there like I'm in heaven. We're done for the day. Me and Alice get in the car. We go back to the hotel, and Alice goes, so let's have dinner. So I would spend another 2 hours alone with Alice, just having dinner, talking about whatever in life, because he's such a down-to-earth, super sweet guy. It was just the greatest time just hanging with him and hearing him tell me all the stories about him and Jimi Hendrix and John Lennon, and they're true Hollywood vampires back in those days. And it's the favorite time, the favorite memories of this. So we kept doing this for 11 months, going back and forth, writing and doing all of these demos until we got to the point where it was starting to get time to record an album. And that's when Tommy Hendrickson, who plays in this band, who's always involved in the albums, I was invited to play. Alice has a Christmas show called the Christmas Pudding in Phoenix every year. It's a charity show with a lot of big stars where they raise money for his foundation. He takes care of a lot of kids in Phoenix. He's got this really cool place where kids can come for free and get dance lessons or rehearse or record and stuff. It's a really cool place. Nice. So every year he has this gala, and he invited me to play with the vampires. So this, and also he said, and then we'll stay for another week in Phoenix to go through the last songs, and then Tommy can bring his stuff as well. So we all ended up there, and the show was super cool. I mean, to play with the vampires with Johnny Depp and all of them for the first time. But it was Sammy Hagar and Korn and all of these other people. It was one of those surreal, cool days we got to spend together with all these people. And then we got into the final stage of going through all the songs, and it was the first time that Tommy Hendrickson heard what we had done, because they had been on tour. So he was a little bit surprised of here, because we didn't really know each other yet. So it was like, why is this Swedish guy here? I'm usually the guy doing this. And then he started hearing what we've done, and he goes, fuck, this is pretty good, And I had the same respect for him. So it was like we quickly just, okay, cool, this is pretty amazing, which is, let's do this. And it was in that room, and I actually have pictures of the exact moment where I'm sitting in my chair, Bob is sitting to the left of me, one guy is engineering, Alice in the sofa to the right, and Tom is beside him, which is the exact moment where Alice goes, I think we should call the album Paranormal. I just came up with an idea for a lyric. So that was the moment because of a lyric, and he started painting this picture of why it should be called this, and everyone loved the idea. So that's where the title came and everything. The last couple of days, this was in December, and we recorded the album in January, about a month later. So we all went back for Christmas, and Bob picked all the songs from everything we had, and we decided to meet in LA for about 5 days before flying to Nashville to do the actual recording. And we had Larry Mullen from U2 play drums on it, which was Bob's very cool idea, to pick somebody who's not the natural choice as a drummer for this, which was a brilliant idea. So he came by to sort of meet everyone, and Joe Perry lives down the street. He came over, and it was like all of these people just hanging around, and we did the final touches and everything. Okay, we have an album, so let's go to Nashville. We recorded it in the amazing Ocean Way studio in Nashville. So that last week was pretty tough in many ways, because I had a really high fever. It was like I had almost 40 degrees, Celsius fever. And I had 2 severely bad infections in my fingers from whatever I had in my body. And so I could hardly even hold a guitar pick or play. And I'm days away from recording Alice's album in Nashville, and we're tracking it live. It's not like I'm, keeping my old friend. So I was on so many American painkillers that is almost about legal, but it was like I have no choice. So it was like I kept taking these painkillers and just like, okay, bite down and just play. And we got through it, and it was pretty amazing experience. We didn't know that Bob was going to make us co-producers, because normally it's Bob Esrin is the producer and we do our work, but we did so much work during that whole process that he came to me and Tom and said, you know, it has to be produced by the three of us because of all the work you did. So wow. From that dream in the 80s till finally being in a situation where I co-wrote half the album and I'm the co-producer and I play on every song, including the ones with the original band. And it's just one of those major bucket list moments in life. And then after that, we did the Hollywood Vampires album together. We did the new one, Detroit Stories, and some other stuff. So it's been, you know, to be part now for 11, 12 years of that Alice Cooper world has been amazing. He's one of the few artists, because you know the saying, don't become friends with your idols. It's very true. A lot of the people that I've respected the most turn out to be assholes. Not all of them, but many have been. Alice is one of those who is as good as you can imagine, if not better. Both him and his wife and the people around. It's some of the best memories ever. And I mean, being a Kiss fan, Alice Cooper fan, Pink Floyd fan, the work that Bob Esrin did, you know, from when I grew up, to actually work with him in this sense. And it's like, it truly, it's just dreams coming true. That's what it is.
Yeah, I could imagine. And again, like talking about, as you said earlier, if you've been on about, give and take about 3,000 albums or more, then this here would probably be one of the big ones. And talking about legacy, you know, that's again a massive thing to have to be able to put that on your resume.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Kiss is the reason I became a musician, because I saw a poster of them in '75. So to actually work on Paul Stanley's album and to tell him what that actually meant, like, you and Kiss are the sole reason I'm even a musician and that I have my life that I have. And then Alice around the same time, and Bob as a producer, inspiring me as a producer, and even Deep Purple, you know, I mean, I'm recording Ian Gillan together with Roger Glover, and just tell them while we're spending 2 days in the studio, like, because they're also such cool people, like how surreal this moment is because of what you meant through my life. It's not that you're starstruck when you're in the moment working, because I've been around all of these people for so long, but it's like, you want to pinch yourself and go back to the little kid who had all of these posters on the wall in the 70s when all of these bands started out and everything, and how they changed our life. And all of a sudden you're sitting there in the seat working with them, and I never take whatever happens in my life for granted. It's one of those things where I'm so happy that I don't do drugs or drink or smoke or anything, because I'm always present. I'm always making sure that I remember. I even told Bobby Kimball when we did that Viña del Mar show, even though he's had the most incredible career ever, I took him like in his arm, and I looked at him right before we went on stage, because we did two times the same song, and I said, Bobby, let's not forget this moment right now together. Like, you and me, the friendship we have, what we're about to do, like, let's not forget this. You know, this is pretty cool, you know. And even he stopped, you know, and he hugged me and said, like, damn right. Like, you know, it's because we get used to it. I mean, it's crazy. And Andreas Karlsson, who was part of the Sharon team, major songwriter, friend of mine since I was a kid, I wrote my first song for the Swedish Eurovision in 2003, which was like a bucket list thing when I grew up. I want to write a song that ends up in the Eurovision thing.
You did?
Yeah. So and it was nice. Like, yeah, I finally did a song, and I got it in the Swedish, you know, competition. It was like, wow, I can, you know, And the year after, I competed in Norway and then in Finland, and then I played on a bunch. But it was like I was finally there, and this was around the time that Andreas and Max Martin and the guys had conquered the world with Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, NSYNC, and all the major stars they worked with.
Yeah.
So I said to Andreas, why don't we write a killer song for the Eurovision, you know? And he said, dude, if I did that after having sold 150 million albums with all of these, it would be kind of cheesy. And he goes, what you do, you need to raise, you know, your eyes. If you're looking at your feet and that's your goal, you will never ever see the trees and the tall buildings or the sky. You need to chase there. Up there is where they live. And it was like, wow, you're right. And now when I think back about it, like, there's no way in hell I would send in a song anymore to the Eurovision thing, because it's like, first of all, I've done it, and today would feel cheesy to do it. Not that in a disrespectful way, it just feels like, you know, there's so much more. And when this Saturday, a couple of days ago, they had a Swedish final after 6 weeks of all the semifinals and stuff. And it was the same week that I'm #1 on Billboard with Alice Cooper. And there's a part of it, there's that voice inside of me where I'm watching the show and I see all my old various friends who are so excited about having a song in the final of the Swedish Eurovision, and I'm not in a nasty way, but in a like patting my own shoulder, going like, yeah, but I'm #1 on Billboard with Alice Cooper right now. So, you know, like, I wouldn't write it on Facebook, I wouldn't say it to anyone like that, but inside you're going like, pretty cool. And since I had my birthday last week, the morning that I woke up on my birthday is when I see that we're #1 on Billboard, and I'm going like, well, could you have a greater birthday present? And for Christmas, I bought one of those really nice rum bottles of the rock band Kiss that they have out, and it's really nice. But since I don't drink a lot, there's still some left of it. And I said to myself, well, I'm going to celebrate tonight that it's my birthday, but also I'm #1 with Alice Cooper on Billboard. And 1 or 2 days later, I went, oh, I forgot about it. It was just a nice day with the family. I forgot about taking that little sip of rum and celebrating. And again, I reminded myself of how I started writing songs for Alice in the 80s, the cassettes with his name. And now it's like 6 albums later, and it's like, Jesus, the album is #1 on Billboard, and I didn't even celebrate it in that way more than being proud. And it's, again, a reminder of I'm so excited about what I'm going to do tomorrow. Like, I keep thinking, what's next? And not stopping and looking back, which is why I don't do anymore, you know, the flashback Thursday, you know, Fridays that you do on Facebook, like, look what I did a long time ago. There's some of them are special and I'm proud of them, but I don't do it because I don't want to sit there and look back in the mirror. I'm more like, you know, here's my plan for tomorrow. What are we going to do tomorrow? What's next on the ladder? How can we get further? You know, that's what excites me.
But out of again, obviously, like, you've accomplished so much. So again, it would even be difficult for me to try and fathom like what would be next. Like, what is the next big thing? Like, how do you level up from here?
Well, and that's the key. And yes, at this point, after almost 40 years, I have started thinking. I worked with Mutt Lang now for 10 years, and we got something coming pretty soon that's amazing. And there's no bigger and better producer on the planet. So it's like, I can't find anyone cooler, better, bigger than him. And I've already done all of that. So it's like, well, does it have to be bigger, better, cooler, or all of that? Is that the goal? No. Because first of all, I'm a dad. That's something, and she'll grow forever. And so I'm more at the point where I just want to be creative. It's about the art. So this rock musical thing, that if this actually happens now, it's going to take a few years to put it together, and it's on a level that it's something. It's always been in the back of my mind that I would love to be part of writing a serious musical, and the people involved here are Oscar, Grammy, and Emmy winning super legends, and it's on that level. So if that happens, it's gonna be whatever I do for a few years, and
Wow.
that's gonna be something I haven't done before, and it's a challenge, and it's a perfect timing with everything else in life. So if that's the next step on the ladder, perfect. If it doesn't happen, I have some other ideas, because I constantly challenge myself to whatever's going to happen next. And because I never really wanted to be a rock star, it has nothing to do with fame.
Yeah.
It has to do with the art. It has to be something where I feel excited about creating it, which could be the YouTube channel for a while, which could be whatever, a new guitar album, whatever it is, anything that just makes me feel good as an artist.
Yeah. Again, I would highly recommend everybody watching or listening to this to actually try and check out your YouTube channel, because there's so much. Like, it's been really inspiring for me, especially in the earlier days when you and I started working together. Like, when you put it, like you posted some stuff that was almost like a couple of like mentoring videos where you are telling a little bit about sort of your advice, your insight to the business. And
there will be more. I paused it for a bit more than a month, because I had some things that I had to take care of that took a lot of time in the beginning of the year, and my mother-in-law just passed away, so I'm helping my girlfriend's side of the family with that, and it's my mother as well. She's 78 and she had heart surgery last year, and it's like up and down every week. In general, her health is fine, but I just got a text yesterday again that she had to go in and get a new heart medicine. So it's like there's been family stuff taking up some time. So it was like, even though I get amazing feedback from my YouTube channel, it's not like I'm running CNN. It's like I can actually pause it for a little while, and I'm starting to feel very excited about getting back into doing more content for it. And I have a whole bunch of stuff that I've collected in my hard drive here, so there will be a lot happening with it soon again. But the cool thing about it is exactly what you're doing as well with your podcast, and you building a studio. It's entering a new place in life. It's exciting, because you're going to walk into a new room for a long time and do something you haven't done before, and I think that is also the most important thing. I mean, you're not trying to build Abbey Road with your new studio. I'm not trying to become the Rick Beato on YouTube. It's not what I'm trying to do. It's just great to feel creative.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's being realistic. My favorite word in life. You're realistic about it, which is what I try to do with everything that I do. I love space. I love everything about space, and it would be fantastic to be on a spaceship and go out and watch it. Realistically, I don't think it's going to happen. So I know where that red line is, so, and I don't try to fool myself with that, even though I do dare going after crazy dreams, thanks to my grandmother, because that's how I think. I'm stupid in that way. I don't know if I even talked about it in one of the YouTube videos, but a friend of mine is the guitar and bass technician for Elton John. So a few years ago, Elton was playing Stockholm, and my buddy said, I want you to bring your girlfriend. I'm going to give you like the best VIP treatment. You can park your car inside of the arena. I'll make you meet Elton and all of this, the whole thing. And I was like, wow. And all I could think about driving there was, how can I make Elton understand that we need to work together? Most people would be like, this is insane. I get to see Elton John. In my stupid brain, I'm going like, I know that I could do something cool with Elton John if I get the chance. So it's like thinking crazy thoughts like that.
But you have to.
And if you end up, which is why I'm working with Alice Cooper and Bob Esser and these people. You knock on the door in the right way, and you deliver what they need, and all of a sudden it's happening.
But it's also one of those very simple things in life where really you just got to ask, what's the worst that could happen? They're going to say no.
Exactly.
If you can think it and say, look, there might be a good chance. Look, I'm gonna try and pursue it. And then same as what you said with Alice Cooper. I was so close, and you finally got in the room with him, and a couple of years later, bang, you're in Nashville, you're in LA, and you're writing. You're not just recording, you're writing and co-producing the album. So yeah, why not? Like you could work with anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're fine with getting a no because you know that at least you tried, then you're on to something good. Because so many people have told me, like, I mean, I was there and I didn't have the guts to ask, and then they regret it for the rest of their life. And I'm like, I've asked some of these people to do something,
yep,
and I got a no for whatever reason, which is fine. At least I asked. Because a lot of times I got a yes, which is why I actually did work with them.
Mm.
It's
so like I'm very much the same. Like sometimes I reckon I almost got too many ideas. So it's like you look like how do I sort of consolidate and actually just try and grab a couple to work on, or maybe work on the other ones in a couple of weeks, because you just have so many balls up in the air. Again, because you're excited, because you're following your passion, you're following your dream. And again, especially, and that's very much thanks to you. The fact is, the whole having no plan B, it makes you 110% focused on plan A.
Which is so important, and you and I are very much the same. If people saw like the papers I have everywhere or in my phone, all the ideas that I constantly get for things, I mean, my brain is just weird. I come up with stuff all the time. It's small inventions. It's a solution to this. It's a name for that. It's all of this, and I constantly try to do all of this. And I'm like, for a long time I did 45 things a little bit, and nothing happened. So I was like, I need to do 3 of them and finish them. If you don't finish them, nothing's ever going to happen. So I write them down. I put them aside. But I need to do this, and I do it until it's finished, and then you move on to the next thing. And it's the only way to do it. But it's, again, I think we're also very happy about having very creative brains, because it's the key to coming up with everything we do. Without it, nobody's going to come and give it to us.
Exactly. And again, and it's crucial, it's super important if it is something you're trying to build for yourself. If you are trying to build your own business, like if you lack creativity, it's gonna be a very uphill battle.
Very much so. I mean, and you're gonna find out sooner than you think, also, because it's this world is not giving you much for free anyway. So it's again, like I said in the beginning, what I'm most proud of is that I created and I did all of this. I didn't do everything myself, because we need people around us who are great, and they add to your thing.
Absolutely.
But I came up with it. I woke up every day, and I did it 7 days a week against all odds, and I'm still here. And whatever success you want to call any of it, it's based on what I did, not what anyone else did, and that's the most beautiful part of it all.
Before I forget, I just thought about it just before. What happened to all the other songs? You said you wrote 30-odd songs by Alice Cooper. What happened to all
Yeah, exactly. I did 38 songs actually in that folder, and 5 of them ended up on the album. The 6th one was kept and used for Detroit Stories, called Shut Up and Rock, which is from that recording. But the other 32 songs are all released on albums. So whenever because I write all the time, I got more than 2,000 songs placed on albums for other artists. So I constantly write for artists all the time. It's what I do more than even guitar sessions. All the time, including yesterday. There was a band for signed to Frontiers Records. I did a couple of songs on their last album, and so they needed new songs. So I just woke up, yesterday, and I finished a song and got the word this morning, like, we love it, this is perfect. So this is what I do all the time. So I knew that I had so many great songs in that batch. There's actually 2 or 3 of them where I have Alice singing them, and I've kept them because it's songs that I'm gonna try to see if I can use maybe for the new Radioactive or something. There's especially a ballad that
Wicked.
both me and Alice fell in love with. We fought for it so hard, it almost made the album. Bob has the final word. He didn't want it on the album. We both still feel that it's a great song, so I'm gonna try to see if there's a chance that Alice will sing it on the new Radioactive. Hopefully will. So besides those, I would say that there's maybe at least 27, 28 of the other songs are all on other albums. The first one I gave away was to House of Lords, and here's the funny part of it. I don't remember the title of it. It's not on the latest album. I think it's the album before, I think. And if you find out which song it is, the song starts with a talk box, which is that sound that Bon Jovi used for whoa, 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 that kind of thing. I have a talk box, and I actually say Alice when the song starts. It says Alice, and then the song starts. And it's just a cool sound. And if you don't really know that I'm saying Alice, maybe you don't notice, but so the song didn't end up on Alice, even though it got pretty close. So I gave it to House of Lords because I worked with them for a long time. They loved it. They recorded. And they usually keep some of my files, some on the guitar, some on the keyboards, and then they work on it. So the funny thing is that that song is on the House of Lords album, starting with my talkbox saying Alice, which is kind of cool. So very few people know that I'm saying it because it was actually written for Alice Cooper. But this is what happens all the time. I actually ended up writing the song that I did yesterday because I don't have more songs sitting around in folders, because every time I have a song, there's people wanting it instantly. I wrote a song for John Elefanti, the guy from Kansas, a couple of weeks ago, for a potential album that he wants to do. And he loves the song and everything, but he's not doing it right now, so the guy at the record label wanted it for something else, but I need to keep it for me. So it's like every time I have a song, everyone's just trying to steal it right away, which is amazing. It's what I love doing more than anything. So yeah, all of those songs actually ended up on all kinds of albums everywhere.
That's awesome, man. And what else in regards to so you obviously you write songs, you play guitar. That's mostly what you and I have been doing together. You know, you've been trying some of my songs, and so you already. I remember at one of our conversations we had. You were also saying you were doing vocals for Tina Arena, like you were working with her.
Yeah, exactly. No, she was actually doing some of the songs for her album at the big studio I was working in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a dear friend of mine who was working there, he wrote and co-produced a song for her in the room next to me. And again, it was one of those, we need guitars on this. So I ended up doing the guitars on that song. Again, fantastic artist. One of those artists that I've loved for years, and looking at a very nice gold record from that album, which is, it's cool when it's artists you really like. But I also did, in the same studio, I worked with Anastacia on her last album, where I co-wrote and play. We again did 4 or 5, 6 songs that didn't end up on the album but she still sang the demos and everything. But while she was there working, the Italian super legend Umberto Tozzi wanted to do a remake of his legendary song Ti Amo with her. So I ended up recording the vocals, doing some edits for that version. And the song is such a classic song, but it was missing guitars that I heard. So I was like, I'm going to do the guitars, and I'm just going to send it to them. And I'm like, if you want, you can keep them. You don't have to pay me, because it's such a cool thing. And they actually ended up using it because they like the guitar. So money is great to make. We need to pay the bills, but it's not the driving force. I'll gladly do anything for anyone if there's a chance. So it was one of those. I'll just do the guitars and send them, and if you like them, keep them, And so, and that song again, it also been, I'm actually getting it. I think next week I'm getting another gold record for that one. So it's cool when it's artists that you actually really like. I have a lot of gold and platinum records for, compilation albums and cheesier TV shows like Glee and stuff like that. Even though they're good songs, but when it's Alice Cooper and Deep Purple and these ones, those they have a little more special place on the walls.
So where does the heart lie? Like where's the real, like is that in the rock genre?
It is. I mean, I think if I had to choose one style and that's it for the rest of my life, it's in the broad picture of rock for sure. But I became a studio musician because I was a diehard fan of ABBA and the Motown sound and Jackson 5 and the whole West Coast scene with whatever David Foster and the Toto guys and Bill Champion, all of these, even the slick West Coast, Mark Jordan, David Roberts, these kind of artists. Love that, but I'm also a huge fan of classic blues, the B.B. King kind of thing, and all the way into the Gary Moore world of his way of playing the blues. And I'm a diehard fan of country. Some of the more traditional, old, but more maybe the Keith Urban kind of more modern kind of country. I love the music and all of that. Shania Twain is one of my favorite artists of all time. I think the albums she and Mutt did are just out of this world. So I've always had this sincere feeling that music is just, it's good or bad music based on my taste. Because what I love, you might laugh at, or vice versa.
Exactly.
It's like there is nothing you can call good or bad, because for anyone who's a diehard fan of the Ramones, they're much better than Toto. But a Toto fan is going to go, how the fuck can you love Ramones? They're crappy punk musicians. Who's right? Nobody's right. It's a matter of taste. Maybe the guys in Toto are more educated, better musicians who can do a job, but it still doesn't matter that, are they better or worse? Because music, it's art. It's how you feel.
Exactly.
That's it.
And I think one of the really cool things about music in general is the fact is that you don't need to be true to just one genre. Like you often see people, if you're like a diehard, like if you're a politician, like you usually sort of stuck on one side. If you really follow one religion or one soccer team, like that's usually everyone else like is fuck off. Like it's only one way. Whereas in music, it's perfectly fine to listen to many genres, and that doesn't like people. Everybody accepts that because music is just such a broad commodity.
These days they do. When I was a kid, if you were into rock and you met somebody who liked Depeche Mode and the synth music, people got into fights.
Oh, really?
Because, it was like two different soccer teams. Like you couldn't be into both because it was actually people knew I was into rock, but I adored ABBA. But I couldn't tell people when I was young. If I told my rocking friends that I love ABBA, they would have beat me up. But the funny part is, years later, when things started changing, it turned out that all my friends were also into ABBA. Nobody dared to say it. It's like,
you cannot not be into ABBA.
Black and white back then. Today, a song is a song. It's like, I even asked Cecilia's kids who are now 20 and 21. And it's like, I asked Olivia when through her teens, like, who's your favorite artist? And she goes, I don't really have anyone. I like that song or I like that song. So these days, people are more like they're into a song for a little while, and we invested our lives. I mean, I had every inch on every wall in the ceiling were Kiss posters. It was like,
nice.
That was my life. That's the way we grew up. And they don't, besides for the Justin Bieber kids and all of this, they're still diehard fans for certain artists, but in general, people don't invest in music the way we did when I was a kid.
Well, it's also because it's so available now. Like literally, if you have your smartphone, like again, if you got your phone in your pocket and I want to listen to this, you can put on a Kiss song, or you can put on a Justin Bieber song. It doesn't matter. It's in your phone. It's
Exactly.
right here.
It's right here, right away, and which is also why music is doesn't matter as much as it did when we were kids. Because before internet and all of this, as a Kiss fan, when I walked down to the record store in the 70s, they had handwritten thing on the wall where it said, like, apparently Kiss is releasing an album in 3 months. Apparently, nobody really knows. Around September, they think. And you had this monthly magazine coming out where they had rumors, small fractions of ideas. So we were like talking like, what do you think the next album's going to be like? Do you think it's going to have new clothes? How will the stage show be like? We were like insane. And then finally that day came and you were almost in tears because the new album was out. These days, it's like, Deep Purple released a new album yesterday. You go on Spotify and go like, oh yeah, it's out. You listen. It's like nobody really cares.
No.
It's not a big thing anymore. It's just part of music is everywhere all the time. And with Spotify and whatever streaming you have, you can instantly find anything. You Google anything that happens on the planet, within 5 minutes you know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's sad in a way because again, I remember the same. I mean, that's how old I am. I still remember going down and lining up in a record store to be able to come up, put on my headphones and listen to a new album before I bought it. And you could, while you were listening to it, you could open up the cover and read the lyrics and see who mixed it and who plays on the album and the credits, like I want to thank my mom and my manager and all that stuff. You don't have that now. Like now all it is, it's just a file. You just click that and you get some music through your Bluetooth wireless headphones. And it's just such a different experience, man.
Yeah, no, it's a completely different experience because we invested so much more into artists and music back then. Plus, there were about 300 albums a week being released in all genres. So there were maybe 5 rock albums a week or whatever. So you could take the time to get into them. There's like 200,000 songs a day being released on Spotify now. So
what?
You're a microscopic needle in a gigantic haystack. It's impossible to go on Spotify and get a picture of what's happening in music. You need to go there and search for what you think you want to hear, because otherwise it's just too much. And it was magic to go to record stores back in the days. When I moved to we went to Tower Records, or Amoeba, and you were going through. And the same in this little town where I grew up. The store, the record store that I grew up with from the 70s is still here, still owned by the same people.
Wow,
even though
fantastic.
their record section is much smaller these days, but they still have the store. And we talk from time to time about how it was when I was a kid. And the biggest store in the central part of Stockholm in the late 80s, early 90s, especially early 90s, I think it was called maybe Mega Store or something like that. It was a huge store, and it was the same thing. You had like the 10 new albums, and you can go and put headphones on, and you can listen, and you go through. And the guy working there that I became friends with was actually Max Martin. He was the guy working. Yeah, the guy who was standing there working before Sharon happened was Max Martin, and he was the singer of a hard rock band called It's Alive. So they were basically, before they got signed, they were just one of the other rock bands. And I knew that he was a good singer, and the band was pretty cool. We ended up playing in a top 40 band together when he became Max Martin in Sharon and all of that. So we did some cover shows and stuff. But it's kind of funny. He was working in that store. So when you went in to check out the albums, it was just, Martin, his name. He was working in the store, and it's, everyone comes from somewhere before they start. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, but the funny thing though, there is just something about Sweden and music, like the track record. And again, I most of my background of like both musical, but also my favorite genres is hard rock and metal. And there's just so many good rock and metal bands from Sweden. And again, like ABBA, like needless to say, whether you like ABBA or not, you cannot deny the fact that they are one of the biggest influences to many people. Is like both in pop and any vocal harmonies in general. Like the vocal production of those albums are just still to this day, in my opinion anyway, completely off the scale. Like quad tracking on vocals, where it sounds like a natural chorus, pretty much. Like how they were doing it back then was just phenomenal.
Absolutely, and the way they took the Phil Spector sound and made it into a modern version. Michael B. Tretto, who engineered and mixed all of these albums, was a very good friend for a long time, and he mixed some of my first band stuff. So I used to go to his house.
Oh, wow.
And I did some guitar work for him because he loved crazy sounds that he would record and use for sampling and stuff. And I did a lot of those, kind of sounds. And so he would record stuff like that. And I remember being at his house, and he was such a sweet guy. And he said, "Is there anything with ABBA you want to hear? I mean, I have all the original tapes here, like the original big tapes." And I'm like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Sure. I mean, like you pick. You have a favorite."
Where do you begin?
Yeah, where do you begin? So he takes the tape and he on his big mixer, he puts all the faders down and he puts on Dancing Queen. And we start like going up every fader, and he goes, the way we got this sound is that we recorded the whole band till we had a good take, and then we changed the speed of the tape just slightly, and we had the whole band play it one more time. So everyone, drums, bass, guitars, everyone just doubled the song one more time, which is how you got that wide, fat sound. So it was the Phil Spector kind of thinking back in the 70s, and just to sit there and go through channel by channel. And it's so amazing because it's recorded on a genius level where every channel sounds cool, but like when you put everything up to 0, it's the final album. It's just, that's Dancing Queen. It's just perfect. So again, they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
But it's almost like there must be something in the DNA. Like, is there a specific Swedish diet that just makes the music so good?
I think one thing that helps a lot is the weather, because it's always been very long winters. So it's in a short summer. And what do you do in the winter? You practice, you write, you create. You have to do something. And then we had a long history of great jazz musicians inspiring people all the way up to ABBA and then we had rock artists coming. So and it was the same when I played tennis in the 70s. When I grew up, we had Björn Borg and there was John McEnroe. It was all of these legendary tennis players. So of course all the kids wanted to be tennis players, because you look at, what do you want to be? You want to be like all of these stars. And then like in the last 15 years, we have Zlatan. Every kid wants to become Zlatan, because they want that. And we had the hockey players. Everyone wanted to be the hockey player. And so, yeah, you get inspired. And Sweden we have a very good school system with music schools, and even in the regular school, you have music hours every week. And it's everything is around you if you want to do it. So it's a privileged country in that way, compared to when I was touring Poland and Ukraine and some of these countries, Romania, where a lot of these people just to find a decent guitar when they grew up or something, or even buy an album, they had to like get a smuggled copy through Russia of a Deep Purple album, when they were kids. And we had everything. So yeah, it was easier for us in that sense.
Yeah. It just boggles me sometimes that you see so much quality come out of Sweden, especially like, obviously I'm from Denmark originally, and there's such a vast difference between the quality that comes from Denmark. I know Sweden is a bigger country too, but still,
it's funny because Denmark and Norway impresses me enormously, because the amount of artists and producers, studios, talents from both Denmark and Norway are absolutely incredible. I think maybe Sweden got a head start in especially with the whole Sharon thing with Dennis Pop and Max Martin, all of these guys when it comes to modern pop. And I think there's some Danish people and some Norwegian people that came and did the same thing a little later, but again took over that scene because Sharon, all of these guys, I mean, Max went his way and everyone else went their way. So I think the talent level, I've always been an enormous fan of Danish artists and productions, and had the pleasure of working with some of them, even with Legends. The last tour we did, we actually had Sanne Samuelsen was because we had a mix of Swedish and Scandinavian artists and our American artists. So Sanne was part of that last tour, and and even Mats Denander. So having both of them on stage playing with them their classic songs that I grew up with was fantastic. So
wow. Yeah,
she's amazing.
Oh yeah, she's got I think she's still called like the Danish rock mama. I think that's her brand name or her slogan.
And she fantastic.
Her son is a very famous guitarist as well. He was in a very famous Danish metal band, and I think he's also doing like production now as well. But he plays guitar for her in her band as well.
Cool. Well, this is what a lot of people do these days, because it's possible to have a really good recording studio at home. And it's, for a lot of people, it's not enough, both for the creative side or maybe for the business side, to just be a member of a band. So I've noticed a lot of people who are in touring metal bands and stuff like that, they do productions, they do songwriting, some do sessions and run studios and this and that. So you know, I mean, we're creative people. This is why we got into this, and you know, and also I think rockers are better people than most other genres. You know, if rockers have a bad reputation because it comes from, well, rock musicians are stupid and dangerous. No, they're like bikers. It's a thing you're born with, and it's just based on enormous passion, love, good times. Nobody argues. If you go to a metal festival, there are no rapes. There's nobody hitting each other. Everyone is just having a beer and having a good time. If you go to a fucking pop festival, there's rapes, there's bullshit, it's just drugs and all of this crap. Rock festivals, even the police will tell you, like, they are the most, you know, calm, easy, organized, you know, great places to work with. Even so,
I couldn't agree more. Like, I obviously go mostly to rock concerts here locally. We are fortunate enough to obviously have live music during the whole COVID. That's a whole different conversation though. But I agree. Like, going to a rock concert, there's just almost this camaraderie, this brotherhood amongst people, and you know, like, you look after each other, you respect each other. And the few times, you know, back in the day, back in Europe, you know, when I've gone to like some of the bigger festivals, you know, where you go for like 3 or 4 or 5 days, when you head over to a stage that play like, you know, techno or like some of that music that almost encourages you to do drugs, then you just see all these dickheads that are just completely off their head on some stupid drug and something.
No, absolutely. Like you, I couldn't agree more. If you're born a rocker, it's a lifestyle of very happy people who even scientists say that people who are into like heavy rock music are more well balanced because they understand the energies, frustrations, whatever any normal person have. It becomes more balanced for people who are into rock music. So I think finally, after all of these years, you know, the reputation is changing. But I have rarely had issues with anyone who's into rock. When, you know, if there's anything, it's people into other sides of this music business.
Well, it's actually a good point. I actually didn't think about it that way. But yeah, you're right. Like, if you play angry music, like if you play rock music, like, you get some of your emotions out.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I'm the same. I've never really done drugs. I've smoked some weed, on some odd occasions and stuff. But yeah, I've been sober for 2.5 years as well. And never really been much of a smoker either. I did some, the odd occasion here and there. Back about 15 years ago when we were touring with my old band. But other than that, yeah, I'm the same as you. Like I enjoy being present and just enjoy everything 100%. And
Right.
yeah, and not that you need to go out and sort of preach sobriety or anything, but it does have so many advantages, especially now when you are a bit older and you're a parent. Like you want your kids to you want to enjoy them fully and all that stuff. And
Especially that when you're a parent. I mean, my dad died when he was 60 from he was an alcoholic for 25, 30 years. He was the nicest guy on the planet. He was like a teddy bear, a sweetheart and a beautiful soul. But the alcohol killed him. I don't have that gene. I don't have any need at all for alcohol. My mom has been sober her whole life. She doesn't do anything. She's been smoking cigarettes her whole life, but she's almost 80 now and she's still here. So good for her. Whatever. It's fine. But I'm high on life. I love being present every day. I like remembering everything in my life.
Yep.
I never preach. I've helped people out of problems with drugs because it's like if I could, I would. So I got them out of shit, and which is fine. And I've helped people who were close to killing themselves by seeing them and taking them and getting involved, which is what you should do with people. But I'm the same way. I don't preach. If you want to live your life doing whatever, it's your life.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm busy with my life, but I will stop and I will interfere if I can, and if it's possible to help people, because we need to. But I mean, I'm not going to run around preaching to anyone. This is my journey, and again, it's how I decided I wanted it to be. And I keep going it, and nobody else is going to tell me how it's going to work, because it's my journey. So I decided I don't want to do this because it makes my life better for me.
But I suppose maybe that actually comes down to some of the stuff you said before about that whole stigma about rock musicians. Because I suppose, especially back in the 80s, they did have a pretty bad reputation for, trashing hotel rooms and like overdosing. And like you hear stories about Motley Crue and like Slash and Guns N' Roses and all
no
those.
Shit, because I was there with those people. I lived next door to Motley Crue for 5 years. I went to their parties, and being somebody who's not a heavy drinker, not into drugs, I loved the start of every party they had. And then the cocaine started flying everywhere, and I said, guys, see you later. And I went home because I didn't want to even be around it. And the same thing with Toto, when not with the Picard brothers, because they actually did not, they smoked some weed and that was it, because they always told me, like, we cannot perform on the level we do every day if we are into drugs. But Lucas and David Page had a long history of much heavier stuff, and thankfully they're here today and they're free from that. But it was a different time. But anytime they started doing all of that, I was like, I walked the other way. So I don't want to be around it. I don't like it. It's always been part of this business. I've never seen anyone into drugs becoming a better human and a better musician or a better songwriter. Maybe for a short time when they were doing some of it, maybe they had a creative moment when they started with some of it, but I haven't seen one single person end up being a better human or a better musician, songwriter, producer because of drugs. I've only seen it kill them or destroy what was so great about them. So, I don't think there's any of these old people going like, thankfully I'm so brilliant today because of all the years I did drugs. I don't think anyone feeling that way. They're like, I did it, I'm thankfully out of it, and it is what it is. But, none of them are better today than they were before.
It is just one of those things that, again, that have been so heavily connected to the genre or to the industry. Where it's almost like, I've had this ongoing joke where I said, like, to be a rock star is almost the only job on the planet where drinking is not only accepted, it's actually encouraged, because it almost reinforces the whole stigma of, like, rock stars are those,
hey,
like,
look at it seriously.
Yeah.
In music and in movies and stuff, if you take what famous people get away with, if you take that behavior and you put it in a regular job, you wouldn't last a day without getting fired. Like
exactly
end of the world, but it's like praised and made cool because they're famous people, and I've told quite a few very, very famous people to go fuck themselves pretty bad, because I don't care if you're famous. If you're an asshole, I'm not gonna deal with it.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't be around idiots and assholes, and especially people who treat other people really bad because they think they're allowed to because they're famous. That doesn't work for me. I walk away, or I will tell the person straight up, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like, bye, I'm not aware.
But that's also, again, one of those things, like through the last couple of months of us sort of chatting on Messenger. This is actually funny enough. This is the first time we actually talk face to face. But yeah, like one of the things that we sort of has had in common as well is the fact that you should always just be kind to people in general.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if it's in music, if it's professionally, if it's with your family or friends. Like, just be a nice person. Like, nothing bad ever comes from that.
No, and Astrid Lindgren, who wrote the books about Pippi Longstocking and all this.
I grew up on all that. I grew up on all her books.
I mean, the most famous and the most amazing woman ever. She created my childhood and everyone, even down to my daughter. I mean, she's into this. It's still the same thing. She's always said, if you give a kid love and then more love and then more love, they become great people. And that's all you need to do. You treat people. I mean, it's what I do with Holly. From the moment she wakes up until we fall asleep, I constantly tell her how much I love her, what a great person she is, how to be great. She's known at daycare. The teachers tell me that she has an unusual level of compassion for other kids, because she see when they're angry or scared or anything is, and she hugs them and she takes care of them. Because it's like that simple rule. She's so full of love and feeling so good about being loved and knowing that she's a good person, that it's more in her than she needs, so she's capable of giving it away. So that is how simple math works with people. I joke and I say even Hitler was probably a really sweet boy when he was a kid. Then shit happened. You're not born that evil. It doesn't happen.
No, you're not.
Everything around you.
Yeah.
So it's like we need. This is why it's more important to be a parent for me than music. I love what I do, but when the day is over, I close the studio and I pick up Holly and I spend the rest of the day in the magic zone where she and I will play around and watch TV and do this, and that's real life. That's the best part of the day.
And it makes me so happy to hear again, and it's something again as a parent, I resonate with that, 200%. Actually 300%, because I got 3 little boys. But,
yeah, 300. Yeah, exactly. It's
But yeah, like it's like those are times that again you can never replicate that. Like, again, you can obviously you can keep playing, you can keep making music, but again, like, your kids, and they grow up so fast. It's so funny how when your parents say that, when you have kids, don't treasure every moment, because before you know it, they're gonna be adults. Like, I've got a 7-year-old who has a mind of a teenager. Like, so it's like you just gotta like.
But sadly, it's true, because when I met Cecilia almost 18 years ago, her daughter was 2.5, her son was 4. And now she's turning 20 in 10 days, 13 days, and he's turning 22 this fall. And it's like, wait a minute, where did that go? And Holly's 5.5, she's starting preschool this fall.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and when Cecilia got pregnant, I was so deep inside of the Legends touring. We had 60 shows booked for Latin America, 60 shows, and we were booked all over. We had major tours everywhere. as soon as she was pregnant and we knew we were going to keep her, it was like I just went to my computer and I said, I'm really sorry, but I'm out. I canceled everything. I had 3 years booked of touring and it's the money that I lost is insane, but it didn't matter. I didn't want her to be pregnant and alone, and I wanted to be there from the first second that Holly was born and never ever tour again. The only time I've been away was doing paranormal because it was one of those, if I miss this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So I went for a week and we were FaceTiming every day. I mean, she was so little by then, it was fine. But after that, I've had offers before the pandemic to go and tour South America with Bobby Kimball and stuff. And I keep saying, no, I'm done. It's not going to happen. I'm done. This is where I'm going to be until Holly gets old enough. And by then I'm going to be too old to tour anyway. So I'm actually done touring. I'm out.
Wow. So are you passing any of your music on to Holly? Is she playing any instruments or?
She is, and Cecilia is very musical as well. Good dancer, and she can sing and all that. It's natural for her. So the same goes for Holly. None of us, we're not pushing anything, but from when she was a little bit more than a year, as soon as she sees a guitar or a piano, she needs to play. And so for Christmas last year now, I gave her a little keyboard and a microphone with a little speaker in it. And she has shows by herself in her room, and she will turn on YouTube on her TV, and she'll sit with her keyboard and play along and sing along. So it's a sincere passion, but I will never ever for a second tell her you should go into music, you should do this. If she grows up and it's a part of her life and becomes a natural thing and she wants to do it for all the right reasons, of course I will help her. But I hope that she creates a very well-educated life in a more normal sense than trying to become a pop star, because that life it's too weird. If she naturally becomes somebody who's really great, fine, then we'll see what happens, but I'm not going to push her into that world. You know, it's not how it works anyway. And I hate parents trying to make their kids, you know. I actually spoke to Holly's teacher this morning. I said, we talked about this, and I've had friends who are like, I'm so happy my son is playing hockey because I'm going to make sure he becomes the next, professional, so I can relax. He'll pay for my life when I go. I'm like, it's not going to work like that.
No, you do it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's all I can do is prepare Holly to be the most amazing person possible when she gets old enough to start flying on her own. And you do that by making them feeling completely safe, loved, and having a good sound idea of how the world works. After that, when she gets old enough, she has to live her life anyway. I'm always going to be here. We're always going to be here for whatever it is. But, it's all we can do is prepare her for an adult life in the best way possible.
Yeah. So do you think, just a random question here. How do you think your life would have turned out if your girlfriend hasn't fallen pregnant?
We've talked about it, and she had been pregnant once or twice before, and we lost the kid, and I mean, because she has 2 kids, and I adore kids, I absolutely love them, but I was always okay with not having my own child. And you get older and everything. I mean, I'm 53 now. I was 48 when we got home, so I was always fine with it. But this time when she got pregnant, she said to me, I know this one is gonna stick. This one is for real. and it was one of those, we had to talk about it, like, are we, she's younger than me, but she was still in her 40s, and it's still like, are we ready for this and the change is going to be? And it took like 3 minutes in my soul to go like, oh yeah. It was like there was no question about it. But so if this hadn't happened, I mean, I would still just be working with music. I would still fool myself to think that music mattered as much as I thought it did before Holly. Now I know that it doesn't. Which is fine, but music is still what I do every day. So I mean, I would still do this, but as a dad, can you even imagine, can you even look back to what it felt like before we had kids? It's like when you have kids, you can't even remember that feeling.
No, it feels like life. This is how I look at it anyway. Like life felt meaningless almost. It felt almost insignificant. And so like for me, like when my first son was born, it was like, okay, like it was like you draw a line and then you have like two lines. It's like everything starts again. It's like you have your life before kids, and now everything makes sense because you have this like it's almost like your bubble just got made bigger, because everything now has to evolve around this little person that are so reliant on you. It's now all of a sudden I have to be a better person. I have to be kinder, nicer. I have to be everything I was before, but more, if that makes sense. So because I have to.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're completely right. And there's a purpose to the smallest things that we didn't even care about before. Yep. And what were big things actually doesn't matter at all. That's beautiful. No. Because they were illusions anyway. They were what we thought were important, for ourselves, because whatever we did before. And it is the best part of this whole thing is and it goes hand in hand with me wanting to become a studio musician early on, because when I got signed with my first band when I was 14, we were a hard rock band, and we were in all the rock magazines, all the pop magazines. There were 3 bands in Sweden that was Europe and Treat and our band. We were the first hard rock bands that everyone was talking about in the media. And I grew up with the guys in the band Europe, and every time we were hanging out, they kept talking about, well, you need to go to this hairdresser and get your fluffy hair like this because it was needed. and I was like, dude, have you seen the new guitar? That is like, John Norum was still about the guitars and all of that. So we were geeks about that stuff. But it was like, it was just screaming inside of me, going like, that's not why I'm into music. I'm into music, not that other thing. So I always felt like, nah, I'm not in this at all to become some cheesy rock star. So that's why I wanted to be a studio musician. And becoming a parent is even more building on that thing where it's not about me, it's about somebody else, which is what I do in the studio. I do everything I can to help somebody with a song or a production or whatever it is, and they take it and they fly. And it's the same thing about being a parent. You do everything you can for a person, the most important thing in the world, so she can fly when it's time. And it's more clear than ever how cool it is. I love the fact that very few things in life is about me, because I thought it was so important for many years that it had to be about me, because I work in a business where you're supposed to say, hey, me, look at me. And now it's like every day whenever somebody says, so what are you doing in music? I'm like, well, I'm working, but I'm a dad. I can point at all and go like, this is life. Don't look at me. This is, and you cannot ignore the fact that that's more important. So I love that feeling.
It's so refreshing to hear that, because I think a lot of people, especially when you talk to people that are sort of aspiring musicians, like people that are already parents, but they want to be rock stars as well. I think it's very hard for them to imagine life on the other side. Like, so having accomplished everything you have. So I think you're in an extremely fortunate position where you have had not only both experiences, but you've also had a really good balance. The fact that you can do a lot of your work from home, you can still retain all your network, all your connections. You can still work with Alice Cooper and being a dad. You can still work with music every single day because you have a studio in your house. You can go down and like you said, you clog out, you go and pick your daughter up, and you're a dad. Oh, well, you're always a dad, but you're also a musician during the day. Like
you couldn't be more right. You're absolutely putting the finger on the whole thing. I did do a lot of soul searching when we decided to keep Holly, and the one thing where it felt like I won $1 billion in the lotto was the fact that I was turning 48, I had already done so much in music that even if I had to quit for the rest of my life, I would still be happy with what I had done in music. It would still be enough. So if I had a kid when I was 25, I would still have loved the boy or girl and still put my life into being the best parent ever, because I always loved kids. But it would definitely have been a huge hole in my soul and a bigger sorrow that it would have stopped a lot of the things that I with such a passion wanted to do in music. So it's of course easier after almost 40 years when you've done everything and the bucket list is basically full everywhere. Of course it's easier to let go of things and be a dad and feel good about it, because I'm okay with where I am with the music. So I understand that it's a gift that I can actually go and be in the studio while she's at daycare, and even when she's home, I have the studio at home. I can put my headphones on and I do a little guitar session while she's playing, and I can still work whenever I want because it's easier that way. But I know it's a privilege, definitely, that I am in this position of having had a career that's so satisfying, and I'm fulfilled with my dreams, that it's easier for me to just focus on being a dad. So I don't have to have that hole, the black hole in my soul of things that I maybe would have missed if I had a kid earlier on. So I fully understand it.
Yeah.
And I think also it's why I'm so ecstatic about where life is right now.
But you seem also like you seem to be really well balanced. Like, again, because you have that, what's the right word? Like almost inner peace. Like you know you have like your dad first and foremost, but then you have music. You have this perfect balance.
It is,
and you bring it up in one of your YouTube videos as well, which is again a really I'm gonna put a link to it. By the time I upload this, I'll put a link to those videos so people can go in and check them, because they are. I think it's like a 20 or 30-minute clip where we talk a bit about sort of the mindset behind making it in the industry and sort of stuff you need to be prepared on. And it's such good advice, man. Really encourage people to check it out.
And that is what it's about. And it's the thing that I learned through life, especially going through some really long tough times where I had bad health and stuff, and it was really bad and I couldn't play for a long time. And when I started to play, I was actually better than I was before, and it surprised me. And that's when it hit me that, wait a minute, you become a better artist by the more you understand mentally, not just practicing the technical side. And that's when I started to understand what art is about. Art is about emotions. It's about truly understanding and feeling things, and then capture them in a way so other people can enjoy that experience together. And that's when you start realizing what music is about, and that's where the balance comes in, because too much or too little of anything is going to hurt you. I have people, dear friends, who are multimillionaires with enormous success, who are the most depressed people in the world, and I have other people who are so happy and fully enjoy life, and they have very little. So where's the balance in what you need to be happy in life? And it's not money, success, and all of that, because that goes over really quick. It's great to have money because, but I've always felt like you need enough. You need enough to make sure that you're not stressed, that it's not a constant chase or you're constantly upset or anything, because stress can kill you. But if you have too much thing, it can kill you from a different angle. And also not maybe just physically kill you, but it can totally kill that glowing little diamond in your soul that's the creative side of you. I think the old saying that you need to be a starving musician to create really well, there's truth in it, because when you are chasing an animal so you get food on the table, you know, it's a completely different thing than when you own a restaurant where all the cabinets are full with food all the time. And because being a hunter makes you, you know, on the edge every day. And if you want to be in this business, if you want to be creative, or whatever it is, being a little bit on the edge, as close as you feel you should be, so it's not too scary, but living a little bit on that edge makes life really exciting.
Very true. And again, I think that's also, again, the whole entrepreneurial mindset. You know, the fact is that you are trying to build something for yourself. Like, you are always trying to not necessarily level up, but you're trying to better yourself.
Yes.
So the whole thing, again, yeah, you're trying to chase the stuff ahead of you, and you see that for a lot of really successful people in general, like what is it, Bezos, you know, the Amazon guy, you know, how he's like, that's all self-made, you know, again. And I think a lot of those people, I mean, obviously money is a great side product, but for them it's like they love the chase, they love the success of being better, you know. So who can I target next? Where's the next one? Because you know, you have that chase ahead of you.
Gene Simmons from Kiss is a lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him. Yeah. You know, when you understand him, you know, you respect and love him. For me, he's been a very huge influence in the fact that people think he's all about the money. They don't understand. He's all about the chase.
Exactly.
For him,
yeah.
His excitement comes from coming up with an idea and doing all the work in making it a reality. And if it becomes success, it's that's where he's happy. The fact that there's more money coming into the account really doesn't matter for him. When you have hundreds of millions of dollars, a few numbers up and down, whatever, it doesn't matter. Few people know that he actually supports 1,500 poor people in Africa every month. He's enormously big in charity, donating money stuff, but he doesn't need to tell people that to make him look like he's one of the smartest entrepreneurs you can find, because he knows how to push buttons, good and bad, to make people react. And when you can offend a lot of people in the right way, you create energy and waves, and within that you can create something else. So, you know, he thrives on the love-hate relationship around the name Gene Simmons. But for him, it's all about the chase, not you know, the actual money amount in the, you know, because he loses and he wins, he loses and he wins, but it's all constantly chasing.
Fantastic. No, that's right, and that's business. You know, like you win some, you lose some. Yep.
That's business, exactly.
All right. We should probably try and finish off here. I've got a couple of questions here that I've had people send in, and before that, I have a quick one I need to ask you about. I've seen. I went in a couple of months ago when we first started working together. I went in to try and listen to some of your music as well, and I found out you actually, besides the Radioactive, you also have something that's released under just your name, like under Tommy Denander.
Yeah, I did the guitar albums. Before I did Radioactive, I actually released some soul albums of instrumental guitar music. And Radioactive from the very start was actually supposed to be under my name, but the guy at the first record label, not Sony, but the one that I released the first album with, he said, you can do that, but it's maybe smarter to come up with a band name, because band names sell better than solo acts do. And since, again, I was more happy with taking a step back rather than forward, I was like, you know what? I kind of like that idea. And the name Radioactive comes from two sources. Being a Kiss fan, there's a Gene Simmons song on his solo album from '78 called Radioactive. And I like that name Radioactive because it sounds good, it looks good, and there's a danger to being radioactive. But one of my favorite old albums is the album that David Foster and Jake Braden did with the name Airplay, which was, they were doing hit after hit after hit, getting all the airplay on the radio stations. So it was like, that was kind of cool that they got airplay So if I'm successful with mine, I will actually, get a lot of radio activity. I will be on the radio. So it will play radioactivity, but radioactive. So that's, so when last time I saw Gene Simmons a couple of years ago in Stockholm, he was here doing his big vault thing. And a friend of mine, we split one of we bought half, because I collected Kiss books. I only wanted the book, and the other guy actually didn't care about the book. He wanted the actual vault. So we paid half of it and had a great day. So I told this to Gene, his guy that he was traveling with from the label. We had been in touch for a while, so he knew that I worked with Alice Cooper and Bob Ezrin. So actually, when we got to meet Gene, his guy said to him, "Gene, this guy actually, co-produced the new Alice Cooper album with Bob Ezrin." And Gene went, "What?" And I met Gene many times, but I didn't know him. Still don't know him. But so we had a little short conversation, and I told him, like, super quick, I've had this career for over 35 years in the business. It's because of you guys in Kiss, my band Radioactive, and this and that, with all the people, actually includes Bruce Kulick and all of this. It comes from your song and this and that. So he signed the book to Mr. Radioactive from Gene Simmons. So that's where the name comes from. But when I started doing my guitar albums, and when I done a few songs that you can find on Spotify, I do them under my name because they're instrumental guitar songs, meaning regularly no vocals on most of it. So it's as much of me as you can get when you do that. And actually, there's a song with me and Holly on Spotify.
Oh,
there's
really?
a version of Holy Night where she actually she was singing it all the time, and I was lucky enough to actually record her on my iPhone as I was just putting her to bed, and she was singing, and I turned on my phone and I managed to record her. So in the end of it, there's actually her singing it, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
It's really Denander featuring Holly on Spotify, and she sounds adorable. And again, she was like 2 years or something when we released this. When she gets older, and that's gonna be on there, that's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah, is she's singing in English or Swedish?
She did it in Swedish. She's amazing. She's 5 years old, and whenever there's a birthday now, because this month it's mine, Cecilia's, and her older daughter's birthday in this. So I asked Holly, it's like, "Do you want to sing the Swedish version or the English version?" She goes, "I want to do Happy Birthday," and she counts in English and all that. So I'm like, "You're 5 years old. Shut up."
Yeah, well,
that's pretty amazing.
Well, I suppose with a lot of your music being from English, I don't know if that makes any difference. But obviously, if you'd be listening to a lot of the artists that you've been playing with, I'm guessing that most of them sing in English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she loves it because she's into music. Right now she absolutely freaks out over "This Girl Is on Fire" by Alicia Keys.
Oh yeah.
And she's singing that full power. And I, "This world is on fire." It's like, it's a English person. And I explained to her, "Do you know what fire is?" And she goes, so now she knows fire means this and that. And sometimes we're watching TV or in the car, I play her something, and she picks these words out. Like, "What's that word?" And she gets it right. And I explain. So she's very interested in the language, which is cool.
It's funny you mention that about fire. My kids go absolutely nuts to Fireball by Pitbull at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
So they come home from school and say, "Oh, can we put on Fireball?" And then they listen, and they dance around, run around the living room and stuff. But
I love it.
But yeah, it's one of the beautiful things about having kids. They go through these phases of songs and they just go nuts on them. And
I love it. No, I know also the fact that she's very musical. She will sit with her little keyboard, and I taught her how to play like "Twinkle Little Star" or something like that. And I think that's actually the one we did on Spotify. So it's like one of these, one finger things, and she's sitting there trying to remember how to play them and sings along. And that's when she understands music, where she likes to play and sing at the same time. So I'm definitely gonna support her having music in her life for the love of music. She doesn't have to have profession in music, but just the fact that you can take a guitar or a piano and play and sing with friends when you grow up. Just that is amazing.
It's like learning another language. Like she would be able to speak with anyone anywhere in the world who can also speak music or can understand music.
Exactly.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. The fact, like, you don't want to push her into something; it has to come naturally.
Exactly.
Like, it's funny. Like, my parents did the same. They tried when I was like 5 or 6. They put me into piano lessons, and I actually wrote in my piano book. I said, I don't want to play piano, and that's when they knew, okay, maybe we shouldn't push him into playing piano. And then eventually, I found drums when I was 13. When I was way older. And I was like, oh, yeah. I like playing drums. I went out, spent my own money, bought a drum kit. And that's different because it comes natural to you.
Exactly. And that's the difference. I was 10 years. I had one guitar lesson with a guitar teacher at school. And I was so upset when I got home because the guy was a complete idiot. Because like I had already played a little bit for 5 years, and my technique is that I use the thumb over the frets, which is what a lot of guitar players do instead of the traditional way, because it's an easier way. It's how you play a lot of the rock stuff. You need to have your thumb. And also it came from because I also play keyboard, and I played keyboard my whole life, like how you can play the bass in the left hand and the chords in the right. For me, the thumb was the left hand, couldn't play bass notes and anything. So I went to one lesson, and the guy yelled at me for having the finger in the right, and even opened a book and said, "This is how you do it." And I was like, "Who cares how you do it? It sounds right." "No, it's not about what it sounds like. You need to do this." And I'm like, fuck off. That was the one lesson I had in my life, and I never went back.
That's the same as you. You need to have the fork in your right hand or your left hand, or however it is when you eat your food. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? Exactly.
Does the food go in your mouth? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Are you happy? Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Fantastic, man. All right, Tommy. Let us grab a couple of questions here, if that's all right, and then try and wrap it up. We've been talking for over 2.5 hours now.
Yes.
It's crazy. I've got one here, which is actually a really good one. It says, "What makes a song great, in your opinion? What defines a great song?"
More than anything, a matter of taste, because what's a great song to me might be a crappy song to the next one. But there are actually a craft. There's an art to writing songs, which is something I've studied more than anything I've studied in my life. I've spent many trips writing with like Carol Bay Sager and people in Toto and Desmond Child and a lot of these people. I went to seminars for years and years in America with the greatest of the greatest, because there's truly a craft. And Mutt Lange, being very much a mentor to me, has taught me so much about like where you start a song is a certain amount of energy, and that energy needs to go somewhere for specific reasons. Otherwise, it's gonna get confusing, and it might start out great, but you lose. It's very easy to explain it this way. When you hear a song, if you start thinking about something else or lose interest, even though it might be an okay song, it means that they didn't put it together right. But if you have a song like "Nothing Compares to You" with Sinead O'Connor, usually when you hear it, you want to hear it till the end. And it's nothing more than a little keyboard and drum and her vocal, but it's just so well written that it's got things that keeps you inside. And people like Max Martin and Desmond Child and Mutt Lange and these enormously brilliant songwriters, they understand this. And the key is this: if you can write a song that's really good by itself, and then understand how to produce and arrange and organize the energies so that you are constantly interested in seeing where the song is going. And when it's done, you want to hear it again because it just grabs you. You want to hear it again. It's like Mutt Lange said, if you can do that, you get rich. Because that's a song like, if you listen to like Max Martin songs, why does everything he's done makes you want to hear it over and over and you don't get tired of it? He has this technique that's built in part of this, where every 10 seconds he introduces a little new thing, a sound, a little backwards thing, a little vocal, a little something. Every 10 seconds, your brain registers something that you haven't heard before. That makes your system want to stay and see where this is gonna go. And if the song is really good on top of that, and the production is really cool, there's so much you want to be a part of for a longer time that you want to hear the song over and over and over. So if 10 million people want to hear the song over and over and over and over, it means you're going to get 1 billion streams on Spotify because they have to hear it over and over and over. And that's the techniques you learn in the craft of writing songs. And that's something that I've spent more time than anything else. That's my passion in life, why I like writing songs. And I understand a lot of these building blocks, which is why my songs never stay in my computer. As soon as I have a song, I can within 24 hours have it placed on an album anywhere all the time. And it's always been this way. So this is something I can trust about my own songwriting, no matter who I'm working with. And I've even told Bob Ezrin and Alice Cooper, like, you are completely wrong with this song. And I got pissed at him and I said, this song is not being deleted. And I put my foot down really hard. And the day after I came back, they had reworked it back to where we were. And they were like, what do you think now? And that's one of the songs that ended up on the album. So you have to have that kind of knowledge and confidence in what you do. So for me, it's a combination of personal taste, and there's also techniques involved in it. So again, if somebody likes an Ace of Base song better than they like a Toto song, nobody's more right or wrong. It's a matter of taste. And then there's techniques inside of it.
Yeah.
And that's a different story.
Perfect. That's a great answer. There's one here. So it says, well, you've almost mentioned that earlier, but you've accomplished so much so far. So what would be your goals for the future?
More than anything, never lose the passion of having fun and feeling creative. I think I am at a beautiful crossroad where I feel like maybe if this happens with like a rock musical that could hopefully take a few years to finish, if I can go into something I haven't done before that I always wanted to do, I see myself later on in life, hopefully if I'm very lucky, doing more music for film. Because again, it's something I've done a little bit of it, and I played on pretty big movies, like Gorillas in the Mist and Alice in Wonderland with Johnny Depp and stuff. So I played on it, but I've always felt like when I see pictures or film, I hear music to it. So I have, grown up later in life dreams, and I still have fun making rock albums, pop albums, and all of this, but it's not the same as it used to be. So I'm definitely hoping that I can push myself into a new area of being creative with YouTube channels, with, I'm actually doing the big documentary about Radioactive myself. I've taken like a couple of years to really learn Final Cut Pro and everything. Like I want to do the whole thing myself. I used to depend on friends to edit videos and stuff, and in this case, I want to put it together. When the 2-hour first part documentary is out, I did everything in it. I put it together myself from start to finish, and maybe I can do more of that. I don't know, but I'm so far from being done with being creative.
And for people listening or people watching who aren't aware, this is actually footage of you recording with Toto, which is sensational, man.
Yeah, I mean, I recorded 45 minutes in the studio with the Toto guys 30 years ago, and then I kept recording a lot of stuff with all of these legends, and also I filmed interviews with Fee Waybill and Jim Petrick and Bobby Kimball and Ferry Frey. I have so much material from all of these people that's going to go into the documentary. It's going to be an amazing movie by itself, because most people haven't seen these people in this way before. So it's going to be a very cool one.
And you're going to release that on your YouTube channel?
I'm going to release the movie as a digital video that you can buy on, like iTunes, Amazon, and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then there will be a special YouTube episode about the making of it when it's done. But since the project is turning 30 this year, I'm actually doing a new album and a sincere documentary, and it's at least 2 hours long, and I have material to make at least 1 or 2 more after that, because the first one is mostly focused on the first album and all of that, and then it's going to be more about the whole project with all the people that weren't involved in the first album. So yeah, there will be more, sure.
Fantastic. Let's grab one last one here. What should I do if, or any advice if I want to try and take my music to the next level? I suppose actually you should go and watch some of your videos on YouTube. Probably a good one.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the sites that I bring up on my YouTube channel, and I will do more of that as well. It's one of the sites that I think is mostly exciting. It's something I've toured the world and done seminars at music schools, at SAE and a lot of these places, talking about this fact, like where are you and how do you get to where your dreams and goals live? How do you actually make it to that point? Which goes back to the whole thing about if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough, and
yep.
Which is a great starting point, but you still need to understand realistically how to get to these points. And there are already some good videos about it on my YouTube page talking about this subject. The key is to understand where you are at this point, and to really be realistic about, like, if you write and you sing and you dance and you're in this sort of Michael Jackson kind of style of music, realistically, you're not going to become the next Michael Jackson, because he was so unique like nobody else. He was from a different time. His whole family, it was like everything in the world made him Michael Jackson, the same way that Elvis became Elvis, or Beatles, whatever. So, but it doesn't mean that you cannot become an enormous superstar today if you realistically have the right talents for it, because there are still superstars being made. So it comes down to, if you realistically have the right talents combined with all the people around you, and it's still a lottery. There's an old saying that used to go around, for a long time when I was traveling, writing songs and talking to record labels, like, if you have a young artist that's absolutely one of the greatest you ever heard, that looks fantastic, and you put them in the studio with all the greatest people on the planet, there's a very, very small chance they might succeed. And that's basically the odds. Even if you have a major label, you have a superstar artist with all the things that you need, it's still a very small chance, even with all of that they become a big star. Because it's the timing of a song that you release in January might be a flop, but if you release it in March, it could have been a huge hit, because the world is just different around that time. And this is the lottery of what we do, and why you never give up, even when, again, the plan A, plan B thing. If you truly understand and believe that you have what it takes to succeed with a very specific goal, well, you will eventually get there. And for Lady Gaga, it took her like 8 years of running around with demo tapes before she got signed. And actually, the people that helped her get signed forced her to do plastic surgery to change her look, because it was not going to work. Katy Perry was running around LA with small cassette CDs and tapes and handing out for long. Everyone starts somewhere. They didn't just overnight become, it's like, what do you say? Sometimes it takes 10 years to get to that 1 year where everything is going to change. It's never an overnight sensation. It's a 10, 20 year overnight sensation once it happens. because it's years and years and years and years of hard work before it happens. And then there are people who are 12 years old and they enter a TV show and all of a sudden everyone just sees them and boom, they make it. But that happens once in 10 years. So realistically, that's not what you're gonna aim for. It's like buying a lottery ticket every day and think you're gonna become a millionaire. Yes, it can happen, but realistically, the odds are against.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Tommy, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, man. I can't believe we nearly spoke for 3 hours, man. That's crazy.
That's what you said. If this, we're gonna be stuck here for 3 hours.
I think I said to you like between 1 or 2 hours or something. But yeah, sometimes if time flies and you're having a good time, it's literally like I said, it does not feel like we've been chatting for 3 hours, but nevertheless, before we wrap.
I totally agree.
And again, and it's so good to actually see you and have you sort of live and actually have a conversation with you, because I don't know how many conversations we've done on Messenger over the last couple of months. So really cool to see you. Yeah, I know. As we wrap up here, just quickly just say where people should go and check you out. Obviously YouTube, we mentioned that a couple of times. If you want to give a shout out to your YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel is probably very easy to find. Maybe you put a link there, and
I'll definitely put a link to it. Yeah.
And it's just under my name, Tommy Denander, anyway, on YouTube. There's an official Facebook page. I think the address is actually facebook.com/Tommy Denander official. That one is, you can just like it and join it, and you can even email me there if you want. I have a private one where I don't accept people that I don't have around me. It used to be 5,000 people, but I decided to, because you get to that limit and there's people wanting to add you and you can't. So I moved everyone over to a regular, more artist kind of page. So there's no limit to how many people can actually just click like, and you can find me. And anyone sending a message, it comes to me. There's no other people working around me or anything. So I'm very easy to find out there. And besides that, I have on Spotify, I've made, I think it's called like Tommy Denander Works or something. If you search my name on Spotify, I've made a playlist of about 1,000 songs that I've worked on in some way, with most of the cool stuff that anything I find on Spotify that I worked on, I just put it in the playlist, so you can like and follow that, and I'm easy to find. So if anyone is interested in hiring me for any kind of work, it's usually fairly easy. And if I do get the rock musical this summer, it's gonna force me to say no to most of the regular work that I do. I will only do selected things around it, because that's going to be the difference,
Yeah. Awesome. I will drop links to all of it anyway, so people can click over. But yeah, I highly encourage people to check out your YouTube and the videos you have there.
Thank you, brother. This was way too much fun, and very, very nice to see you like this, because we basically talk anyway daily. So
that's it. Fantastic, Tommy. Again, it's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best for the afternoon, and you need to go and pick up Holly soon. I'm guessing. What's the time in Sweden now?
It's past 2 here, so I have about an hour and a half to basically just do a little emailing and stuff, and this was my Tuesday, and it was perfect. So
fantastic. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tommy. Really appreciate it. And
my pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All the best, brother. Ciao.